Turkey, perched above the Sea of Marmara in the background. Let's see if I can fidget with the camera to give you a little bit of a view. Well, first off,
Hello.
good morning, Annabelle.
Morning. Oh, it's in the middle of the night in LA, right?
Not the middle of the night in LA. Let's see. It is, I guess, 10:48 p.m. on the west coast of the U.S. Getting pretty late on the East Coast. Not the ideal time to start this, but nonetheless, here we go. All right, so behind us is the Sea of Marmara, BC 17. Thank you for tuning in. I don't know how well you can make it out because it's a pretty foggy morning here, but that should be Asia in the background. Oh, good morning to you, Melissa. It's probably a
Hi.
better time zone for you than most people in the States. Yeah, here we are on the historic peninsula in Istanbul. Maybe not the best view citywide, but
It's raining today.
yeah, it's a beautiful area nonetheless. But yeah, it's been the weather's taken a bit of a turn for winter and dark winter here. What would you say about the weather to get us kicked off this morning?
It's like in Hamburg or in England a little bit, but not as cold. Little windy, but you can wear your jacket and some layers, and people are still sitting outside.
Any new impressions of Istanbul since we last appeared on a stream?
Lots of people are on the street. So curfew here starts at 9 p.m. There are only a couple of restaurants where you can take food home, take out food, and everything else is closed. Yesterday we had a little bit trouble to find some food, but for tourists it doesn't count, right? I mean, we were not harassed by any police for being outside after curfew.
As far as I'm aware, this curfew does not apply to tourists. Actually, to call it a curfew it might be a bit of an understatement. So there's a 9 p.m. curfew on weekdays, and then the official line is that there's a weekend long curfew starting from I think 9 p.m. on Friday to 5 a.m. on Monday, and they're calling that a curfew. I would basically call it a lockdown, a weekend lockdown. However, there's still quite a few people out, predominantly tourists. I was being offered rides on the big tour buses, the double-decker tour buses called the Big Bus that make their way around Istanbul, taking you to the different sites. So those were fully operational over the weekend, and
the little trolley is also still running. So here's this little train what goes all around the city.
the tram.
Oh yeah, tram.
Which is actually interesting to note because the mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu just announced, and he was riding, I believe, also on a brand new tram line that's about to launch, that takes you from the Aminanu area where we appeared and where we got off the boat on our live stream last week to somewhere way down the Golden Horn. All right, I'm just queuing up the chat, and I'm queuing up some things that I need to look at to talk about. We have fast-paced news coming in with regard to sanctions, which we'll get to momentarily. But good morning, or good evening to everyone tuning in.
Look how beautiful it is.
You want to?
There's the Sea of Marmara.
You can grab the camera if you want. Maybe show them the mosque also. Good morning, Melissa. I already mentioned. All you other guys, I don't know where you're at. Cosmic Squirrel, Angel P.
So we're having here this beautiful terrace all for ourselves. Check this out.
Is the connection hanging in there?
I think so. So, I don't know. We're having an issue here. It's leaking from the roof. So here it's a little bit wet, but you can check this out. Beautiful, right? So I already said the city reminds me a little bit on Nice, what's in the south of France, and it's also mix of Nice and Hamburg. Nice, because there are all these little fountains all over and a lot of rooftops, here in this old town are little houses with different heights. And it reminds me on Hamburg because it's on the sea. Oh, and here, let me open this window. There's the mosque. It's like this. Okay.
Excuse me. All right. So, did you show them what a lot of tourists refer to as the Blue Mosque, but is really known as Sultan Ahmet?
Yes, over there.
Yeah, we're positioned right underneath Sultan Ahmet, which I mentioned in the live stream the other day, but you didn't see it. But maybe if you're a hardcore viewer of the channel, you've seen Sultan Ahmet in past live streams. We've been talking a bit lately how the historic building that stands right across from Sultan Ahmet, Hagia Sophia, has now been reverted back into being a mosque. It originally was a church and then became a mosque in Ottoman times, and then became a museum during the times of the Turkish Republic up until this year when it was changed back into being a mosque. That's nearby as well. All right, I'm seeing who's here. BC 17, Diego.
Do you want to put this maybe up here?
Maybe. I don't. Let's see if I can do that without crashing it. Good morning, good evening to everyone tuned in. Rune, Diego, BC 17, Angel. We're going to get to the news momentarily. There is a lot of news here, especially with regard to sanctions. News that was coming in overnight or during the day today, your time, if you're over in the U.S. Let's see. Okay, that's set up. Let's see if I can pull up a U.S. State Department statement. For those of you unaware, the U.S. has, I guess I would say at last, announced sanctions against Turkey over the purchase of the S-400 missile system. This is something I talked about at length last year, particularly in the aftermath of Bilderberg, the last Bilderberg to take place, which, by the way, I think I'll give you an update on Bilderberg in general, what much or whatever I have in terms of an update. There was no conference this year. There will be no conference in 2020. 2021's up in the air, but we'll get to that later on in this broadcast. So the U.S. government has announced sanctions against Turkey. They're targeting the Turkish defense industry. I'm trying to pull up a statement somewhere. Trump had been pretty opposed to this for a while. So going back a couple years, the U.S. Congress had made it clear that they wanted to impose sanctions against Turkey over its purchase of the S-400 missile system, the Russian air defense system that the U.S. says is not compatible with NATO, and the U.S. has voiced a whole lot of concerns with Turkey over its purchase and recently its testing of the system. And the U.S. kicked Turkey out of the F-35 fighter jet program over that. Turkey had been taking part in manufacturing parts of the F-35s. But then on top of that, the U.S. had been threatening to impose further sanctions against Turkey over the S-400 purchase. And Trump had been very resistant to that. A lot of people are saying that's because Trump is friends with Erdogan or has this good relationship with Erdogan. And to some extent, he did echo Erdogan's frustration over previously, in a sense, being denied the ability to purchase the U.S. Patriot missile system, and instead, from the perspective of Erdogan and Turkey, in a sense, being forced into purchasing the S-400 system. That's not the point of view of the U.S. government, but Trump had echoed that to some extent and had been resistant toward imposing sanctions on Turkey. But Trump's hand has now been forced by the veto-proof passage of the U.S. NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which people have been talking about for all kinds of reasons. Trump threatening to veto it because of his demands to change the way that social media companies in the US are regulated. That we talked about a bit during the last broadcast. But Trump's hand had been completely forced by Congress now, and the bill, I think, required the US to impose sanctions within 30 days on Turkey, and now the State Department has already announced them. Let me keep an eye on the chat as I try to pull up the State Department statement on this. Let's see who has what to say in the chat. BC17 says, I've been watching Luke We Are Changed for years. I found your channel when he gave you a shout out during Chopistan. So couldn't find. Well, you want to talk? I wasn't the only one in Chop.
Yeah, we were in Chop.
You want to talk about Chop for a few minutes?
Yeah, I can say one thing about Chop. In Seattle, there are a lot of homeless people, tons of druggies, and the people in Chop were, in my opinion, taking care of them. In the beginning, it started out that it was really artsy. There were lots of tents around where you could pick up paint and just draw on those boxes, what they set up there, and then this whole thing went a little bit down because, yeah, why did it go down? There were some shootings around.
Well, that was a.
I mean, it's
that was,
an
that was a
autonomous
major.
zone. They occupied basically the baseball field and
Cal Anderson Park. The shootings were a major issue. There were several of them, and there were people killed in and around Chop. And I mean, there were a lot of issues. There are business owners in the area extremely frustrated. They were suing the city. I don't remember what's the latest development on that, but there's been a lot of fallout from Chop, arguably, or at least the Black Lives Matter movement in Seattle. The police chief, Carmen Best, who is a black woman, is no longer the police chief. She's resigned. The Black Lives Matter movement essentially led to the very progressive Seattle City Council voting for major defunding of the Seattle Police Department, and Carmen Best was not on board with that, and she left. I think she's working as a commentator analyst for a local news channel there now. At least that was what I saw last. Actually, for that matter, there's autonomous zone news in Portland, and I've been trying to line up an interview with someone who has been there. Obviously, we're quite far away from the West Coast, but I've wanted to keep tabs, at least to a degree, some degree, on the protest movement, particularly on the West Coast, because we covered it so much this year, and it had been such a focal point on the channel. And I'm trying to line up an interview with someone who has been there at the, I guess it's pronounced RAZ, the Red House Autonomous Zone in Portland. Have you been following that at all? If not, it's understandable. We're a world away from there. Lottie says, stop by to show some love. Glad to see you both. Glad to see you, Lottie. All right, a tweet from Mike Pompeo, who, by the way, was at Bilderberg last year, and I'll get to how Bilderberg ties into the sanctions. Pompeo tweeted 12 hours ago, despite our warnings, Turkey moved ahead with its purchase and testing of the S-400 system from Russia. Today's sanctions on Turkey's SSB demonstrates the U.S. will fully implement #CAATSA. We will not tolerate significant transactions with Russia's defense sector. The CAATSA is the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. And that is the legislation that's the basis for the recent legislation forcing Trump's hand to implement sanctions against Turkey over the S-400 purchase. By the way, there are also sanctions with regard to Russia's, I was about to say Turkish Stream pipeline, but no, Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which I don't know, maybe we get into that later in the show, maybe not. That pipeline has, the sanctions are suddenly posing a really significant threat to the existence of that pipeline. And there's a lot of questions whether Russia is actually going to complete that project, that being a second line of the existing pipeline from Russia to Germany that will reroute gas to Europe away from Ukraine and to Germany. That's been a major issue in Europe for several years, particularly for Eastern Europeans, and it causes a lot of division within the EU. I don't know, maybe we'll touch on that later, maybe not. BC17 says, here in America, the war drums are getting louder at China. Some are saying Israel will stab America in the back and side with China. My thoughts on that? Martial law soon, perhaps. All right, that's a lot to unpack.
Well, what's Russia doing with the money from the gas, what they are selling with their pipeline?
Well, that actually ties into NATO. So the argument that Trump has made, with regard to this pipeline, Trump has actually taken a much firmer stance against Russia than the Obama administration did, and it'll be interesting to see what Biden does as he takes over. So Trump has made the argument that Russia is raking in, or would be raking in, all this cash from this gas pipeline to Germany, and in turn uses the money it receives to further its defense initiatives or build up its military, which in turn the U.S., because of that, is responsible of defending Germany and Europe from Russia. So Trump's been making the argument that Germany is entirely hypocritical.
Sounds like Germany is funding the military in Russia.
Arguably, yes. And arguably, there's been blatant collusion between, at least on this matter, not between Russia and Trump, but between Russia and Germany, to the point where the former Chancellor of Germany, Gerhard Schröder, am I pronouncing his name?
Gerhard Schröder.
You can pronounce it better than me, but Schröder sits on the Gazprom board and is essentially the head of the Nord Stream 2 project. So there's been, and he obviously has ties with Merkel and the German government. So some people would argue some people would argue the real Russian collusion has been there with Germany and over Nord Stream. That ties in because again the U.S. is imposing and trying to impose sanctions on those cooperating not only with the Russian defense industry but with the Russian energy industry, and under the argument that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline is a geopolitical project rather than a purely economically motivated project. The geopolitics of it, to oversimplify things, are just to reroute gas away from Ukraine. Oh, and I didn't really address any of BC17's questions. I'll try to do that quickly.
I just pick up some breakfast.
Okay, sounds good to me. I haven't even started drinking my tea this morning. Which one's my tea? This one?
The one with the cup plate.
All right, it's nice to get a little chai in the morning to wake up. War drums getting louder with China. BC17, I don't think the war drums, or at least drums for a hot war, are all that loud with China, but the geopolitical clashes, the economic clashes, the surveillance clashes, all kinds of stuff is heating up with China. And actually, if you're referencing Luke talked all about earlier today, at least earlier today, U.S. time, about this huge leak showing all these Chinese Communist Party members, a database of Chinese Communist Party members, and linking that to CCP members who, in a sense, have infiltrated large Western companies and institutions, particularly in the UK. What else were you were saying? Is the possibility of Israel stabbing the U.S. in the back and siding with China? I'm not sure what you're basing that on. There's been a lot of Israel and U.S. news, particularly with regard to the wider Middle East right now, with countries reaching deals to recognize and normalize relations with Israel, the latest being Morocco. What do we have here? Martial law in the U.S., perhaps? Well, I can tell you, I was just in a country with martial law. That was Armenia. There was martial law imposed in Armenia before I went there to cover the war with Azerbaijan. And I think I'd argue that during martial law in Armenia, there's more freedom than there is at the moment in, say, California with the lockdown going on. All right, hey, could be nothing. Yeah, we're getting started. Thank you, could be nothing. We're getting started really late East Coast time. It's a little bit of a challenge, especially at this time of year when there's an 8-hour difference between Istanbul and the East Coast, 11-hour difference between Istanbul and the West Coast. It's a little bit of a challenge to pick a time that works to stream from Istanbul when I have an audience in the US. But I wanted to today, especially given the news. And I got to get into how the sanctions relate to Bilderberg. I will very shortly. A lot of talk about martial law. Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on how you define and view martial law. I wouldn't expect for instance, to right away or anytime soon see the U.S. military, say, policing the streets and policing the clashes between Proud Boys and Antifa. But who knows? Things are getting kind of crazy.
Breakfast is ready. I'm gonna show them what breakfast we have here.
All right. We have a Turkish breakfast being delivered to us.
Looks like, let's show what we got here. So we got tea and bread and omelette. And yeah.
I don't know how well you guys can see it. I'm panning the camera, and I don't know if Annabelle can even see. Can you see?
Yes, looks
All right.
great.
It's a pretty traditional Turkish breakfast. You'll probably be eating more of it than I have. I will. I'll probably be eating more leftovers from last night's dinner, which was also good. Let's see. I will get back to Bilderberg and sanctions momentarily. I want to try to keep pace with the chat. But yeah, like I was just saying, you could be in martial law, but not seeing a bunch of military or soldiers policing people on the streets. That was the case. I arrived in Armenia and there was martial law. There was martial law for the duration of the time I was there. And part of the martial law was a ban on protests. And that didn't stop people from protesting after they didn't like the result of the war. Speaking of which, over the past several days, I've started asking myself whether the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan is actually over. Because there have actually... Look, there's the woman on the terrace. You really like having this whole terrace life
Oh,
here,
I
don't you?
love that. So, you can just see all over the city, and it's just so beautiful.
Anyway, clashes returned over the weekend between Armenians and Azeris, particularly over a couple villages where the Russian peacekeepers either hadn't been stationed or were very late to arrive. So a little shooting, fighting broke out. And I think it was announced that there were also some other casualties over the past month after the ceasefire had been reached, that hadn't previously been announced. And then there have also been rumors that Azeri troops had been closing in on that town in Armenia that I went to during the war, David Bek, and making announcements trying to get our Armenian troops out of the area. Anyway, there's still a lot of tensions over there, and they're still boiling over at times. And then on top of that, last week there were tensions throughout the Caucasus, drawing in all the players because Erdogan went to Baku for a military parade last week to celebrate Azerbaijan's victory in the war. And during that event, Erdogan read this poem that triggered a really angry response from Iran, basically claiming that Erdogan was reciting a poem that amounted to a territorial claim on the region of Iranian Azerbaijan. So there's actually a region in northern Iran that is also called Azerbaijan, and there's a large ethnic Azeri population in Iran, and this is something that Iran has major concerns over. They have major concerns over a separatist movement among Azeris, ethnic Azeris in Iran, and because of that, actually, Iran is not really formally, but practically kind of allied with Armenia as opposed to Azerbaijan, which it shares a religion with. But yeah, so over the past week, there have been tensions that have heated up between every player there. So there have been obviously tensions boiling over again between Armenia and Azerbaijan, resulting in actual fighting and shooting. And then Turkey or Erdogan enraged Iran by reciting that poem. And then on top of that, there have been accusations lodged at the Russian peacekeepers for not doing their job to prevent the fighting that broke out. So tensions involving Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Russia, and Iran. Every player in the Caucasus.
It seems
I
like
guess
that
I
they
guess
don't want to have peace there.
you go for it.
Yeah, so my take on this is that those people, they are so violent, they are kind of unconscious for killing other people. I mean, what do they expect to ever have like a peaceful area there? You can't make peace or harmony with violence. And what is, when Erdogan says, okay, we are, with the winner of the war, what is the winner of a war? The group who killed, tortured, and slaughtered more people. So that's very questionable for me. And that reminds me, personally, I don't know if you know Game of Thrones, on the Dothraki, who speak like a language what you don't even understand. They don't make sense, and they just want to fight and fight and fight. And what will be the outcome in the end?
Kevin comments neocons seem more gung-ho on going to war with Russia rather than China, likely more proxy wars rather. Now that comment I find interesting because by the way, I get it's really late on the East Coast. I'm sorry we're starting at this time. I hope to start like a couple hours earlier, but we're a little late getting moving. This comment about proxy war with Russia. Now that's really interesting for one reason. I don't know if anyone in the U.S. is really aware of this, or at least talking about it publicly. But in the region right now, there is a lot of talk about Ukraine possibly using Turkish drones to launch an offensive to reclaim part or all of Donbass from the Russian-backed separatists. So lots and lots of military analysts and probably governments all around the world have taken note of what happened in the war over in Nagorno-Karabakh, particularly Azerbaijan's use of Turkish and Israeli drones, because the drones were a total game changer. The drones essentially were the catalyst in allowing Azerbaijan to make advances against Armenian forces, both in Nagorno-Karabakh and in the surrounding districts that are part of internationally recognized Azerbaijan, but had been controlled up until the war by Armenians or Armenia. So now Ukraine is forging a much stronger partnership than it had previously with Turkey. And there's a lot of talk about the possibility of Ukraine trying to replicate Azerbaijan's success in and using Turkish drones. So this Bayraktar drone had, along with the Israeli drones, had proven extremely effective in Nagorno-Karabakh. And there's talk about Ukraine possibly using these drones in order to win back territory in a similar scenario. And the politics of the region are such that Ukraine and Azerbaijan are on friendly terms as well, and they view their, at least from their government's perspectives and by and large the people's perspectives, they view the Nagorno-Karabakh dispute and the Donbass dispute, and maybe to a lesser degree Crimea, but as being similar situations in which, from their perspectives, Russia has allowed or enabled or outright controlled separatists who've taken chunks away from their country. So that might be something to look out for in the case that you do see a strong possibility that neocons or the Biden administration might be interested in a proxy war with Russia. I kind of doubt that. I mean, I kind of doubt that the Biden administration is going to take Russia on straight on with regard to the Donbass conflict, because the Obama administration did anything but that, at least in my opinion. It was Trump who sent lethal weapons to Ukraine. Obama never approved that.
Well, Biden has a long history with Obama and wars. How many wars did they started? 7?
How many wars did who start?
Obama and Biden.
I don't think they started 7 wars, but you could argue that they started Libya and were
Well, they were
were party to
involved
starting
in
Syria.
a lot of wars.
But yeah, I mean they were dropping bombs and drones all over the place. That's for sure.
What are those people for cowards? Pressing a button and then throwing a drone at people. They can't even fight anymore with their strengths.
Hi, Tom Jode, and hi, B-Pause. Both of you are regulars or contributors to my media operation in some regard or another. B-Pause, what's your other account, Zach? I can't. Lord, yeah, B-Pause. Sometimes you're Lord's Army, but that's Zach.
Hey, Zach.
I've interviewed him at a protest in San Luis Obispo, and we've collaborated on stuff before, and he's contributed to us this year. So
He gave us a selfie stick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's another contributor, Costello. Thank you for tuning in. Who's, by the way, I'm skipping ahead. Costello saying I'm spreading the Biden rumors far and wide. I'm not sure what the Biden rumor is. Tertiary's tuned in. I don't know if Tertiary is a professor or whatnot, but you're tuned in. A lot of regulars, or some regulars, maybe new regulars. Maybe we're getting new Eastern Hemisphere regulars. I want to hit on Bilderberg because then I'll get back to the chat momentarily, but I keep talking about or referencing Bilderberg with regard to the sanctions. So last year, and I need to pull up an article or two, maybe I can do that while I talk. At the last Bilderberg conference to take place, because there was none this year, the Bilderberg conference in 2019 in Montreux, Switzerland, or Montreux as we Americans tend to say, there was somewhat of a leak. By the way, do you think we should turn on the lights? Would that improve the lighting?
Let's see, I can try.
I've talked about this in the past. So at Bilderberg 2019, there was someone in attendance who actually teaches at a university here in Istanbul and previously was a Federal Reserve economist in the US. Her name is Selva Demiralp. I interviewed her last year and I wrote a couple articles based on what she was saying about both Bilderberg, what took place there last year, and back then, I don't think it improves things. I think there's now some weird lights in the.
I think when we go in this direction, the light is better.
Yeah, it is, but how do we mount the camera there?
We just move it.
Let's
see.
do that after I hit on this Bilderberg.
You sure?
Let's
we
do
can
it
just
after.
Oops.
Let me hit on this Bilderberg thing first.
Anabellen Technik.
Then we can, technical difficulties. Then we can do that. Okay, so Selva Demiralp attended Bilderberg last year, and after Bilderberg, she wrote an article. It was first published in Turkish and then published in English. And the article detailed a lot of the discussions that took place at Bilderberg, which was entirely unexpected, and it arguably violates their rules. She was saying that she didn't think it violated their rules. Then again, who really knows what the Bilderberg rules are? But lost sound? Can you guys hear me? Do we have sound okay? Maybe just one person lost sound. Maybe that was a sound issue on your end, Mr. Jode. I know who Mr. Jode is. Anyway, so among what was brought up in Selva Demiralp's article was the matter of the discussions at Bilderberg over what were then potential sanctions against Turkey over the S-400 purchase. Annabelle, could you help me and get this article posted in the chat?
Yes.
Although now the computer is going to take a while to start up. I could pull it up on the phone. That would work.
Just send it to me per WhatsApp.
So Ms. Demiralp said that there were strong divisions between the American side or delegation, whatever you want to call them, at Bilderberg last year, and the European side or delegations. And they were particularly divided over China, which also might be interesting to talk about given all the renewed interest in China and the renewed interest in China that I see in the chat. But for all the divisions that Ms. Demiralp said that there were between the Americans and the Europeans at Bilderberg last year, and you might also want to note or remember that both Mike Pompeo and Jared Kushner showed up at Bilderberg last
This
year.
article?
They weren't there for the majority of it. I want to get to that later.
Okay.
They weren't there for the majority of it, but they were there for the boat ride and for a large part of day 3. But anyway, so despite all these divisions, according to Ms. Demiralp, the Americans and the Europeans at Bilderberg were all in agreement on the issue that sanctions against Turkey over its purchase of the S-400 were a foregone conclusion. They were going to happen. And then, in a sense, they didn't happen. We waited and we waited and we waited, and the issue somewhat seemed on the back burner. But now they've arrived. So now the sanctions actually have taken effect. So Ms. Demiralp's account of what was being said at Bilderberg last year, essentially as of today, or as of yesterday for most of us now, has proven true. The U.S. has indeed sanctioned Turkey over its S-400 purchase. Back a year ago, I guess some people were thinking, well, maybe just because the U.S. has kicked Turkey out of the S-400 program and there's a big rift between the U.S., that's enough and there wouldn't be further sanctions on top of that. But no, what Ms. Demiralp was saying was the sentiment at Bilderberg has proven true. There are full-on sanctions now. They're targeting the Turkish defense industry, and I think particularly the Turkish defense procurement agency and the head of that agency and other top officials in that agency. Although I wanted to pull up the statement. Later in the broadcast, managed to pull up the U.S. State Department statement on who exactly is targeted by these sanctions. But what were the sentiments at Bilderberg 2019 appear to have now been proven true. And then so I wrote one article for Bulgaria Analytica, which I'm going to try to pull up now, about Ms. Demiralp's account of what happened at Bilderberg last year. And it didn't just include the sanctions issue. The sanctions issue were of particular interest to me and of particular interest to her, of course, because she's Turkish and from Turkey, but also because she's an economist and she focuses on, she discusses a lot about monetary policy. She's a former Federal Reserve economist in the U.S. and she and I talked about the impact on the lira. And she was saying back then that, in a sense, sanctions were already priced in. But now it should be interesting to see that with sanctions hitting a year and a half later, and with the lira already being devalued a whole lot more since then, if this even further devalues the lira, which I'm sure it has the possibility of doing. So back then, the lira was around 6 to the dollar, a little under 6 to the dollar, I think, but it had fallen at one point to 6.5 to the dollar. When I interviewed Ms. Demiralp after Bilderberg, and then I wrote a second article about that interview that focused a little more on the Turkish economy and political situation and less on Bilderberg, but it referenced Bilderberg nonetheless. And Ms. Demiralp back then was saying that she thought that the sanctions were essentially already priced into the lira, but that the lira could fall to, say, like back to 6.5 to the dollar. But now, a year and a half later, the lira has, at its lowest, or at its worst point, which was very recently, it's already fallen to 8.5 to the dollar. Since I've been here in Turkey, the lira has been around 7.8 to the dollar. And yesterday, I saw it around 7.85 to the dollar. Let's see if I could figure out where it is right now. Sorry, I've been having some technical difficulties pulling stuff up. Let's see. I'm back online. USD to lira. What's it at right now? Why is the internet so slow? Can I use your phone?
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Lira's at 7.83 to the dollar right now. Why don't we talk about that momentarily in terms of how that ties into travel? Then I'll get back more to Bilderberg and get back to the chat. Would you say things are expensive right now in Turkey?
No, so when you go on the street and get one of those fresh squeezed juices with pomegranate and whatsoever, oranges, apples, it's about $1.20. Staying in a hotel is very cheap. Most of the hotels are empty. A lot of hotels closed down, but it's not expensive.
So
I mean, when you compare it to New York or Los Angeles.
someone's saying the internet in Turkey is not good. I would actually say I've traveled all around Turkey. I would say the internet in Istanbul it's solid. Some places I go, they have really weak internet. Some places I go, they actually have excellent internet. My favorite cafe here has internet that's faster than most places in the U.S.
But your
So it's
favorite
kinda-
cafe closed down.
It's kind of hit and miss. Well, it's sort of open, sort of not, which is kind of how things are in Turkey right now. So and we were talking about this during the last stream where we were walking around, and if you want to see the sights of Turkey, you can rewatch the last stream.
And us taking the ferry from the Asian side to the European side.
So obviously, like everywhere in the world, or almost everywhere in the world, the Turkish economy is hit by the lockdowns and all the economic devastation that's been going on this year. But that's coupled with the devaluation of the lira. So, and that even though Turkey's one of the countries that is basically open right now, there's obviously been a decline in tourism anyway this year. So things are pretty cheap here.
And a lot of people in the restaurants are making fun about the coronavirus. I mean, right now it's really cold, and usually people are having the flu. So when somebody sneezes, and they say, "Oh, it's the coronavirus." But I also talked with another waiter in a restaurant, and he told me it's more government control than actually like a threat to humanity. What is good, right? I mean, we are not all going to die.
All right, I'm getting close to getting this Bilderberg article or articles pulled up. Actually, I really have multiple Bilderberg articles to share. Maybe we skip ahead to Bilderberg 2020, which never happened. But I did want to finish up a little bit on wow, why am I
Yeah, I
struggling to
definitely feel
operate this?
safer here in Turkey than in Los Angeles.
Well, you want to get into that because I think a lot of people would think you would not feel safer in Turkey.
Oh yeah, definitely I feel safer. I mean, I was badly harassed. There was a man, a girl escorted us out as we were surrounded by a mob in South Central Los Angeles. They were calling me all kinds of names like Nazi wife and just made up crazy stuff without even knowing me, without even knowing who I am. And then, a girl escorted us out there and they were running after us like animals, and the guy kicked the car what we were in, insanely violent. I mean, they kicked the car with two girls in there, and it was really scary. And also other live streamers were harassed, and West Hollywood isn't safe as it used to be anymore with all those protests. There were people threatening live streamers to stab them. And
Can you put this article in the chat?
yes.
So you're referencing the first incident you're referencing happened in South LA, which is also known as South Central. and that happened in the live stream. I forget what we called it. I didn't even change the name on it, but it's got like 23,000 views, and it was the last protest live stream on my channel. And
you can also find it on my channel, Romika Annabelle.
Actually, yeah, go to. I should have put your channel in the description.
Wait, I can put it into the chat.
We'll do that later. And yeah, you can put your channel in the chat right now. Actually, Annabelle has better footage, has higher quality footage of the harassment that we faced that night in South LA than is on my channel. And like I said, so my hand was pretty much forced. We were basically, if I was to keep live streaming those protests, I would face imminent harassment, if not assault or worse. So my hand was basically forced to, well, stop streaming them. But I'm not going to completely ignore that situation. As I was alluding to earlier, I'm working on setting up an interview with someone who's been at the autonomous zone over the past week in Portland. Likewise, I should have another interview coming out soon with a pretty prominent protester from the West Coast. So I'll try to, and we've got a lot of footage that we either haven't published whatsoever, or it could be repurposed from the protest earlier. So we're not going to entirely ignore the situation in the U.S., but we are abroad right now, and that's the focus.
Yeah, and I'm still working on a video, where I have different angles from South Central with other live streamers, what I combined all together, so you can see the situation in real time, what really happens there. So here's the thing, I can't post website links into the
all right, maybe
chat.
this is working now. Been having some technical difficulties.
I tried to post the article, but YouTube doesn't allow me to.
What?
Yes, look.
YouTube's not allowing you to
Look.
Oh, you did post it in the chat.
Oh,
That's
can you see it?
That's kind of bizarre.
No. Yeah, so I tried to post this article, but for some reason YouTube doesn't allow me to.
Well, we'll see if I can do it on the. Hopefully, okay. Hopefully that's just a brief connection issue. Sometimes that happens where the connection cuts out for 20 seconds or so. Hopefully there isn't a repeat of that. But can you guys see us and hear us right now? Let me go back to the live chat. I lost the live chat for a second.
It's the article and before it. Let's see if that
All right,
works.
B-Pause says good to go. Melissa says yes, we see and hear. By the way, guys, I'm gonna get back to the chat in a little bit. Let me just hit on a little more Bilderberg stuff. Boy,
Did this work?
I'm just struggling with the
Let's see,
internet
maybe-
on the computer. But anyway, maybe I'll just go back to the chat right now as I continue with technical difficulties on the computer side. Maybe this is gonna work now.
Okay, I'm going to do it like.
There, I think
Yes.
I just. Oh, maybe YouTube's changed. There we go. There's the link. Or does that link work? Anyway, I just posted the link. What hopefully works to. Yeah, it looks like it does. All right, so
Yes.
so in the chat, I just posted the link to the article
Yes.
I wrote last June following Bilderberg 2019 titled Surprise Bilderberg Report Reveals Divided Western Elites United Against Turkey S-400 Deal. So if you read this article, you can see it in writing that the matter of the Turkey's purchase of the Russian S-400 and potential sanctions as a result of that purchase, that matter was discussed at Bilderberg last year. And according to Turkish economist Selva Demiralp, basically everyone in attendance in Bilderberg, or anyone who had an opinion on the matter, was in agreement that sanctions were coming. And they didn't come right away. And it seemed for a while like they might not come because of Trump's defense somewhat of Erdogan. But now they're here. The sanctions have been imposed. As I try to adjust, I don't know what's going on. Why is our background not what it was before?
Probably because the lighting is
You
changing.
can see less of the Sea of Marmara, but a little bit. There we go. You can see a little more of the Sea of Marmara. I think these lights are
Not good?
I don't think they're help. Well, leave them. It's so
Or
be
we
it.
just turn it.
So be it. So be it. Whatever. It's not perfect. I've had plenty of streams in Istanbul with incredible views. This one's a decent view, not an incredible one.
We could turn it.
Let's just leave it. I don't want to make it worse.
Okay.
I've been called out somewhat for being too bossy with you. Am I too
Kiebig.
am I too bossy during these live streams? That's for you to answer.
Sometimes you're a little unfriendly. I told you that.
Okay. Sorry guys. It might be in my DNA. Free Loving says show us the view, damn it. Well, you showed the view earlier. Go for it one more time.
Okay, I'm going to take up and then I'm going
Cuts out and it shifts over to data, so there's gonna be a connection interruption.
You sure?
Yeah, I mean you can
I can try
you
it.
can do it, but you're gonna probably have to reconnect.
Let's just try it for a second because I definitely want to show you this rooftop here.
Meanwhile, I'll queue up the next Bilderberg article.
Okay, let's see if it will work. Romika and Technic. So let's see. Okay, right now you're still on. So why I also say it's a little bit like in Paris here because they have this. Now we are going up. The view. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely stunning. And you know when during the night time with all those beautiful lights here, it's just incredible. And I love to have one of those rooftop houses. There's the sea. Here's a fresh breeze. Does it smell nice? Oh, it smells incredible here. It's just fresh. Here's no smog. Like in Colombia, there was a lot of smog and I did not like it at all. So, and here are all those beautiful seagulls and you can wake up to the sound of the seagulls. Okay, it's a little bit fresh out here. Let's go back to Josh. Here's the staircase. It's a little bit dangerous. Uh-oh. Oh yeah, and here there are people. Where are they? There. They are saying good morning. Okay. And as I said, we have the entire terrace for ourselves and it's a beautiful working space. Okay, we are back.
Are we still live?
Yes.
I can't tell. Alright, very good. Hi guys. The phone's a little wet.
Oh yes. Let's see.
Yeah, actually I've been getting a lot of questions from people interested in coming to Turkey and Istanbul right now. The weather is not good, in my opinion. It could be a lot worse if you're.
I love the weather because you can wear a beautiful coat and it's fresh and I don't know. I just love the city. I think it's the most beautiful city in the world. Better than Paris because in Paris there's so much trash on the street.
Okay, here's an interesting one. Cannot make a connection from Southeast Asia to get to Turkey. I believe you can. Well, in normal times, I'm positive you can. Turkish Airlines flies to multiple destinations in Southeast Asia. However, I don't know right now. Right now, I shouldn't say all the flights, but there are so many routes that are screwed, suspended, altered. Yeah, it says yes, but now they're not. All right. But yeah, so I've been getting a lot of questions privately about coming to Istanbul or Turkey right now. I think it makes sense depending on where you are in the world, what your situation is. There's a mini lockdown here, but at the same time, you can get in the country no problem, and the lockdown doesn't apply to tourists, or at least in practicality, it doesn't apply to tourists. So there's an argument to be made to come here right now. As we said earlier, it's really, really, really affordable at the moment, but it's winter time now. Maybe if you go to, say, you do a tour like I did with Josh Sigurdsson a year and change ago, and you go to the south or southeast and you go see Göbekli Tepe, maybe Karahan Tepe, if you can figure out where it is,
and you dig around an ancient architecture to find the evidence of ancient civilizations.
It should be warmer in that region, or on the various coasts, Aegean or Mediterranean. There's always a lot of reason to come to Turkey, and if it's open, I guess why not?
The food is just amazing. You can get fresh fish and meat and grilled vegetables, and I'm in love with the food.
Okay, I see the chat's busy. I'm getting back to the chat momentarily, but first, what now with Bilderberg? So I've done some reporting this year on Bilderberg. I've written a couple articles on Bilderberg on my personal news site, freemanpost.com. There's now a link in the chat to the latest. The latest article I posted on there about Bilderberg is Bilderberg Group will not meet in 2020, a first since 1976. I get into how back in 1976, which was the last and basically only time since the onset of Bilderberg that there wasn't an annual meeting, that was amid the Lockheed bribery scandal that encompassed Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who was a founding member, maybe you could call him a founding father of Bilderberg, and the longtime chair of the group. Maybe it was the steering committee back then, maybe not. It's not so clear. Bilderberg isn't entirely transparent about its governance structure going back a lot of years. But anyway, in an effort to be more transparent, in recent years, the Bilderberg meetings, as you might want to call them, or they're called formally, or let's just call them the Bilderberg Group. They have a website now, and they've added a lot to the website, and they do have a media team. I never know who exactly I'm communicating with when I'm exchanging emails with the Bilderberg media team, but I've exchanged several emails with the Bilderberg media team, and I wrote way back in March that Bilderberg was being postponed, as they called it, and that based on what the Bilderberg media team was saying, that they wanted to meet in person this year rather than in the digital format, which is going to be happening in Davos next month. Maybe we get into that in the Great Reset, maybe not. However, the Bilderberg 2020 meeting did not happen, and now the Bilderberg media team is saying that they hope to have a meeting in 2021, and they gave me one quote that was a little peculiar. So I'm going to try to scroll down the article and find that quote. At one point, they tell me in this email exchange, while there won't be a Bilderberg meeting in 2020, we hope we're able to have one in 2021. But then they gave me another quote saying, we hope to have, no, that's a different one. Maybe I didn't use that exact quote. Maybe I paraphrased it. Maybe I'd have to dig out the quote from my email. But at one point, they said something about announcing the 2021 meeting, and it seemingly contradicted the other quote they gave me. Okay, yeah, so I included it as a partial quote. In a follow-up email, the media team said it will will publish the date and venue of the 2021 Bilderberg meeting as soon as we can. So how might you read that? Do you want to read into that? Quote, they will publish the date and venue of the 2021 Bilderberg meeting as soon as we can. So are they saying there will be a meeting in 2021? And
Probably they are planning one for sure.
what they might be planning is unclear. I've tried asking them, so will you just roll over the 2020 meeting into 2021 with the same location, the same participants? I can't get an answer to that. Usually when I ask very specific questions, I get polite denials and refusal to comment further. That's usually what happens. But the Bilderberg media team is pretty good about giving me a little something. So that's what this article basically is. A little something, with also a little something on the background of how they didn't meet in 1976 because of the scandal, which basically Lockheed Martin, back then it was known just as Lockheed, was bribing high-level foreign officials in order to get their fighter jets sold to other countries. And one of those high-level officials was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who played a similar role to those now being sanctioned in Turkey, basically being in charge of weapons procurement for the Netherlands. Prince Bernhard was bribed, or he received more than $1 million in payments from Lockheed. That came out, actually, I don't think the exact amount came out in congressional hearings, but the scandal basically came out in congressional hearings, and the New York Times reported on it back then, and it became clear that Prince Bernhard had accepted more than $1 million from Lockheed, and this was part of the larger Lockheed bribery scandals. And in 1976, amid the bribery scandal, there was no Bilderberg meeting that year, and I believe that was the end of Prince Bernhard's tenure as chair of the Bilderberg Group or steering committee or whatever it was back then, which is an interesting historical note to add to there being no Bilderberg meeting this year. As for 2021, obviously that's up in the air. Read into the quotes that I got as you may.
No meeting in person? Did you ask them if they have a Zoom meeting?
Well, I had been asking them earlier in the year about whether they would have a digital meeting, and they would not give me a straight answer, but you can see the quote that I have from their quote that I have in this article from March, and you could read that article from March as well on freemanpost.com. They seem to be pretty clear in their email to me that they did not tend to have a formal Bilderberg meeting via some electronic video conferencing system. Now, did some of them privately get together via Zoom or who knows what? I guess that's it. Who knows what? You want to chime in any more on that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would assume so, but
there were rumors and speculation in the alternative media that there might be some secret Bilderberg teleconference this year. I have no evidence that happened. I wanted to get back.
You want to change this so the light is better?
You can change it however you like.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get back to the chat now.
But I don't want that your computer is going to crash.
Oh, well, it's
Already
crashed.
happened. So let's see. Maybe this way is better. How's the lighting this way?
Know, 'cause then
The lighting is good this way.
Then there's not much of a view.
The
So we're
lighting is
okay.
good.
Okay, what do you put it in the chat? What do you prefer? Now I'm a little, especially with all this hair I have on my head. I gotta get a haircut.
No.
Now half my head is missing from the shot.
Well, you can.
Okay,
sit
so
here.
put in the chat. What do you prefer, this view or the previous view? And now I am getting back to the chat. Well, trying to, because of the technical difficulties. No, I need to see the chat.
There you go.
Melissa says leave the hair.
Yes.
That didn't quite answer.
When you
Oh, looks
cut your
good either
hair,
way.
you cut your spirituality.
Yeah, okay, if you say so. It definitely makes me stand out more. I want to see the chat. Can we pull it up on your phone or something?
Yes.
I also had, before my computer crashed, pulled up the statement from the
Here you go. U.S.
State Department on the sanctions. But we'll get to that later.
Well,
Let's scroll. I'm scrolling back. Your Jufro is showing. It's exactly what it is. How'd you guess? Oh, you're Jewish as well?
Look, you can sit here if you want. Yes. Sit.
Am I sitting on breakfast? Can you guys hear us from this distance? I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe like this. No.
No, Josh. Yes, they're hearing us fine.
All right, scrolling a ways back through the chat, I'll just start at some random place. Nerdigans Inc. says it's going to get worse in LA thanks to the new DA. Alluded to it, I actually, in an interview that I've already conducted, but I've yet to process and upload, I touched very briefly on the situation with the new DA in LA. Very briefly. For those of you not aware, the previous DA of Los Angeles County, which I believe is the largest prosecutor's office in the United States, the LA County DA's office. The previous DA was Jackie Lacey, a black woman who interestingly was absolutely hated
by Black Lives Matter.
You want to touch on that a little bit?
Well, it's kind of contradictory. I mean, Black Lives Matter wants more black people in higher positions, and then...
If I were to share my opinion on that was a pretty principled stance by Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and their affiliate groups. They thought that Jackie Lacey was really in the pockets or the pocket of the police union, and because of that would not prosecute killer cops, and did all kinds of things that they viewed as favorable to police and not good for the Black and Latino communities. But anyway, Lacey lost to George Gascon, who I believe is the former San Francisco DA. And George Gascon is talking about a major policy transformation. So he's talking about what's also been talked about statewide in California, trying to get rid of cash bail. Don't know if that will happen. Or wait, did they? Boy, I'm forgetting. I think cash bail is going to be eventually done away with in California. I need to check on that. I'm forgetting. I think that actually was approved by the legislature. Maybe someone can fact check me on that. But anyway, he's Gascon's talking about not charging minors as adults anymore. He's talking about completely doing away with enhancements to criminal charges, like gang enhancements, for instance. Jay Bliss Speaks says new LADA is very woke. It's going to be the same as Mike Schmidt in Portland. Speaking of that situation in Portland, so yeah, the DA in Portland has chosen, by and large, to not prosecute Portland protesters who get arrested for a variety of reasons at the protests, including now at the autonomous zone in Portland, which once again, I'm trying to line up an interview with someone who's been there at the autonomous zone.
So basically they're getting a carte blanche for being violent.
Some people feel that way. Others obviously don't. No, we're not married, Jimmy. Okay, another random comment. I think there's some stuff in German.
What I also saw where was it, in Portland, there were some Black Lives Matter protesters. They were white and they were hitting on a bus and stopped the bus, and the bus driver was a female black lady.
No,
And
that was Seattle.
yes,
That was right next to Chop.
Seattle. And they were very violent, like really hitting on the bus, telling her, to say Black Lives Matter, and yeah.
Yeah, we live streamed that toward the end of one of those evening marches, and we were just returning to Chop after having gone, I think, on the freeway where someone ended up being killed later on, and we were just getting back to Chop, and we were right outside Chop, and yeah, they stopped. A couple protesters stopped a black female bus or trolley driver, I forget what it was.
I think it was a bus.
And they demanded that she say Black Lives Matter.
Called her all kinds of names, and yeah.
Free Loving at one point asked, what does the Great Reset mean? Maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Now, I can't tell you what exactly are the motives of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. So Klaus Schwab is the founder and head of the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is known for having their annual conference in Davos in January. I touched on that very briefly before. I guess we'll get into it a bit more now. Actually, I touched on the Davos event, the upcoming Davos event, in the Bilderberg article on Freeman Post that I put in the chat a little bit ago. It'd be nice if we could repost that in the chat, but it's all right. Go to freemanpost.com if you want to read it. It's just as it sounds, freemanpost.com. So Klaus Schwab, the head of the Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum, and the WEF itself are all over the international media calling for a great reset. So they're calling for using the current pandemic crisis, economic crisis, whatever you want to think of it, as a reason for a reset of the global economy. And they're using terms like rethinking global capitalism. Now, there have been some specific proposals and a lot of pretty obscure language. There's been some page advertising the Great Reset Initiative on the World Economic Forum website. I think it was advertising the Great Reset, or at least linked to it, with some notion, some advertisement with notions like in 2030 you're gonna own nothing and have no privacy and you're gonna love it. I'm paraphrasing it. And a lot of people are not so crazy about owning nothing, having no privacy, and being told to be happy about that.
And what to do? There was this lady in Sherman Oaks with that restaurant in Los Angeles, and she invested, I think, $80,000 to make an outdoor dining area. So first they had to wear masks, then, they had to outdoor dine with social distancing. Then that was not allowed anymore either. And then a film set just pops up next door where all the extras are sitting outside, hanging around there waiting to go on set. And that's allowed. I'm still wondered what type of film set, what production that was, who got that okay to do that.
Annabelle's talking about a video that went viral in which there's this restaurant owner in Los Angeles who's showing and describing what you were just saying about how she's forced to shut down completely, and then there's a film set in the same parking lot where they're eating and about to film something, apparently. That went viral. She was interviewed all over the international media. But back to this Great Reset thing. So what is typically the case with
workers.
The World Economic Forum doesn't just put on Davos. I've been to a World Economic Forum event, or mini forum for that matter, in Sofia, Bulgaria at the 2018, I think it was. There was a high-level EU meeting with all the heads of government and state and the heads of the EU back then. Back then it was Jean-Claude Juncker and Tusk from Poland and Tajani from Italy, and all those guys. Anyway, there was a high-level EU event about the Western Balkans. I attended it as press. Actually, that was something that got me a Bilderberg scoop. But I don't want to get back into that. That's too much of a tangent. So I attended a World Economic Forum discussion or mini forum there. The World Economic Forum, they have their flagship event in Davos every year in Switzerland in January. And out of a lot of these events they have and press releases they put out and communications they have with the press, there's always a lot of obscure language. Some people would refer to it as feel-good stuff. So it's hard to know whether they're really specific proposals, at least at this stage, within this Great Reset initiative that might steer the world economy more in the socialistic or arguably communistic direction, and whether they're governments and heads of state that are really on board to implement specific proposals, or whether this is more feel-good speak, feel-good language, and a way to capture a lot of attention and to use the crisis to get good PR and whatnot. I think time's going to tell with regard to that. But nonetheless, Davos next month will be held digitally, not physically. And the digital Davos forum that's supposed to take place next month, in which world leaders get together on Zoom or whatever teleconferencing platform, that's supposed to mark the rollout of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset initiative. And then the World Economic Forum has announced that they plan, which I discussed in the Freeman Post Bilderberg article, that they plan on having a replacement for Davos in Lucerne, Switzerland, another beautiful place in Switzerland. Actually, up on a mountain, up in a resort up on a mountain overlooking Lucerne and Lake Lucerne. They're talking about having their annual conference there in May, but I think there's a pretty good chance that that thing doesn't happen in person either. They're already talking about it being a combination of in-person and digital discussions. Who knows what the world looks like next May, but I don't know if by then there are going to be a bunch of people gathering together on a mountaintop in Switzerland to further this Great Reset initiative. Maybe, maybe not. Annabelle and Josh should sneak in as waiters. You're an actress. I'm not an actor.
Maybe I should sneak in and, just sit at the bar or restaurant, have a couple of glasses of wine and try to talk to the people. Well, I don't know. But I mean, regarding this Great Reset and this insanely amount of unemployment, what they are putting out, usually, you were not allowed to apply for unemployment anymore to a specific date. But I know people who still got, after this deadline, they applied for it and they got like nearly $19,000 cash, like in 2 days. So it seems like they want to make everybody dependent on the government, and then probably when the government is not going to put out that money anymore, then they're like heroin addicts, just begging, doing everything to get more money from them.
Now, when the specific unemployment figures you're talking about, are you talking about in California?
Yeah, in California.
Now that's interesting. I'd like to find my Calcos News article on this. So
I need to put on my glasses to read chat.
As some of you might suspect, the California unemployment program or the actual agency is called the EDD, the Employment and Development Department. Is that what it is? I think it is.
Don't know.
Anyway, as you might expect, California's unemployment program is rife with fraud. And this came out in a huge way recently. I really want to find my Calcos News article, which details this. So it recently came out that hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly up to $1 billion, in unemployment money issued this year that was basically federally funded but issued by the California Employment Development Department, that hundreds of millions of dollars of it, or up to $1 billion, actually went to inmates in prisons and jails in California at basically all levels. So, county jails, state prisons, and federal prisons. There were inmates in all of these facilities all throughout California, including people on death row, including some notorious convicted killers like Scott Peterson, who's right now actually trying to get his murder conviction overturned. He collected money from California's unemployment system this year, and inmates all around the state collected unemployment money.
That's where
from
your
California.
tax goes.
Well, and not just California tax, but that's where some of your U.S. tax money goes. So if you're in Tennessee and you're paying the IRS, some of that money might be ending up with Scott Peterson or someone sitting on death row in California.
Not to schools anymore, because schools are closed and kids have to do Zoom schools. And I talked with a lot of kids and they're just having it. Kids were telling me, these masks are not working, it doesn't make sense because, the air goes through the side and then they're ripping it down, throwing it on the ground, and they're tired of Zoom school. They want to hang out with their friends again and not on the computer. I mean, basically, when you're all day as a kid on a computer doing even physical exercise on a computer, you can get way better YouTube tutorials or learning languages with other type of apps, or I don't know, maybe the best thing to learn languages is just going to another country.
Well, you can speak from experience. How well did you speak English before you moved to the US?
Oh, not so well. I learned mostly to speaking. So yeah, that was a thing because my English teacher claimed she was allergic against me because I had a guinea pig. I thought that doesn't make sense, But so I had to sit in the last row, and me and there was another girl who were basically the worst English students in our class. We made it, to English-speaking countries. I went to America. My friend, she went to Great Britain, and the way you learn a language basically was hand and feet, like a baby. And then I was in acting school, and every word what I didn't know I wrote down, and when I got home, then I looked it up, and that's how I learned English.
My language skills definitely need some improvement, although...
Joshi's learning German.
No, I'm not learning German.
A little bit.
I would say based on your observations, I can get by in several languages much more than German. I found my Scott Peterson's in the headline, but there you go. It's in the chat right now. My recent Calcos News article headline, Inmate Scott Peterson part of massive unemployment fraud scheme. That details how inmates in California have been collecting a combined total of hundreds of millions of dollars in unemployment.
And the other thing, I talk to people, it's now really, really difficult in California to apply for food stamps and medical and unemployment. So this one guy who got the $19,000 in 2 days cash, he had a lawyer to get that. So now you basically need a lawyer to get unemployment. It is absolutely ridiculous.
I want to tie that back to the Great Reset. So maybe someone can fact check this. I don't know whether or not the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset Initiative have put out a policy statement on the matter of universal basic income, something that a lot of protesters in the US have been calling for, and I think something that a lot of people are calling for worldwide. My best guess is that the Great Reset Initiative could possibly end up furthering the initiative or agenda of there being universal basic income worldwide. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, I heard about that, or I was reading this book, and they were talking about that, about universal income worldwide. I don't want to have a universal income. I rather, I don't know. If you're a teenager, and you have a dream, like, oh, I want to open a restaurant or a hotel or a hair salon, all those things are gone. And I don't really want to depend on the government. And also the thing with the free schools and free health insurance. You have that in Germany, but I wouldn't want to I wouldn't send my child to a school in Germany. That's like an indoctrinated brainwash system for socialism, what they're having there. So I wouldn't want to pay my tax money on, free schools where they're putting this socialistic ideas out to the children. And the other thing was the health insurance. I mean, it's free in Germany, but it's basically, you're getting pills and I don't know, MRIs over and over and over again. I think I made this example with my mom. My mom had a headache and they sent her on an MRI. They didn't find anything. Then the doctor said, oh no, we have to do it again because, maybe next time we're gonna find something. And I don't like this, I don't know, I even don't like this Western dentists. Josh went to a dentist, and where did you go? In Colombia, it was $50. As I went to a dentist in Beverly Hills, I didn't have anything, no pain, no nothing. They scared me so much and said, oh yeah, you need a crown. $850, and I didn't have anything. So I felt for the scam, and yeah. I wouldn't want to have free health insurance. Definitely not this Western medicine health insurance, what just makes you more sick and throws pills and vaccines into your system.
That universal health insurance, I don't know, maybe that could end up being a great reset policy proposal. I'm not sure.
Maybe we are doing this lighting change again.
We'll have to look.
I want to check how it's so bright here. Maybe this way is better.
Yeah, but I don't want to move the whole set.
No, you can just go there.
Now I lose my computer. All right, I saw something.
This better.
I saw two things in the chat I wanted to address before. Oh, look, there's a big ship.
Yes.
Costco. Wait, isn't that the Chinese state shipping company, Costco?
Wait, let's see if we can zoom in here. Jocelyn, you have to help.
I don't think
Take it out of the window.
I don't think it zooms in. Can someone check that? Is Costco the Chinese state shipping company? Can you guys see this? So, let's see what you can see. I'm not sure, but I could just flip. I could flip the camera around. Sorry, guys. There we go. Flipping the camera around. All right, there you go. The foreground in the picture is Europe. Ship is in the Sea of Marmara, but making its way directly for the Bosphorus Strait. And then the land in the background is Asia. Can someone check, is Costco shipping the Chinese state shipping company? China Costco Shipping itself is formed by a merger of Costco Group and China Shipping Group as one conglomerate by a creation of a new common parent company of the two groups. Thank you very much. So yeah, this gives you a live look at, well, I can't tell what's on that ship, but that ship is packed.
It's a great thing to spy here on ships.
Yeah, this is an incredible spy area. So the Bosphorus Strait, if you watch the previous stream or other matters or other streams from Istanbul, then or you just know in general, the Bosphorus Strait is the waterway. It's hard to zoom in and stabilize, but the Bosphorus Strait is the divides Istanbul with Europe on one side and Asia on the other. The Bosphorus links the Black Sea to the Aegean Sea, which basically links the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. It just so happens that the rights of passage through the Bosphorus Strait are governed by the Montreux Conventions, which were signed sometime in the 1930s at the very hotel that Bilderberg took place last year, at the what's now called the Fairmont Le Montreux Palace, something like that, Fairmont Le Montreux in Switzerland. Anyway, the Bosphorus Strait is extremely important for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is that it's the only passageway for Russia's navy to go from its warm water port in Crimea to the world seas. So you go through the Bosphorus, then you go through the Sea of Marmara right here in the Aegean Sea, and it takes you to the Mediterranean. And the only way for Russia to get its navy ships from its lone warm water port out to the Mediterranean, which is its route, which at least had been its route to resupply its war effort in Syria. That route is through the Bosphorus and literally right through Istanbul. And Turkey in the past has threatened to cut off traffic through the Bosphorus. And that could be something to look out for in the months and years ahead if Turkey and Russia continue to clash. So as I was explaining there, as I'm trying to get reoriented here, as I was explaining, Turkey and Russia have been on opposing sides of the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. They've been on opposing sides for years in Syria. And actually, Turkey was threatening to cut off traffic through the Bosphorus when things heated up over the downing of a Russian warplane and over the Turkish-Syrian border, which was shot down by Turkey. Things have been calmer, and Turkey and Russia have been cooperating quite a lot in recent years. But now, as I was mentioning earlier, there's talk about Ukraine possibly using Turkish drones to mount an offensive to reclaim territory in Donbass. And Turkey is forging a closer partnership right now with Ukraine. So the possibility of Russia and Turkey being at each other's throat, it's still there. It hasn't gone away. Now, where were we? I was gonna talk about, as you got that live look at traffic heading into the Bosphorus through the Sea of Marmara. I was gonna touch on a couple more things related to Bilderberg, the Great Reset, maybe universal income. I forget. There was a question in the chat a while back. Someone asking what is Bilderberg, or someone was saying they need more information on Bilderberg. I think we all need more information on Bilderberg. Having been at least on the outside of a few of those conferences, even I am, and even having some communications with the Bilderberg media team, I'm not privy to a whole lot of information about what's going on inside Bilderberg. I have interviewed a couple individuals after they've attended Bilderberg meetings. I got into that in a couple not so well watched streams last year. One of those interviews I've detailed, that was with Selva Demiralp, and I wrote a couple articles on Bulgaria Analytica discussing it, one of which was in the chat a while back. But Bilderberg, to put it rather simply, is an annual meeting that takes place give or take 3 out of 4 years in Europe and 1 out of 4 years in North America, usually in the US, but also in Canada. It brings together Western elites, so high-level people from government, from big business, including banking, including energy, including media, actually, that journalists and media executives attend, but they pretty much never report on what is discussed at Bilderberg. High-level people from academia, and just a whole bunch of people that the Bilderberg steering committee, for whatever reason, choose to invite each year. So they get together. In recent years, it's usually been in late May or early June, and they meet for about 3 or 4 days. They meet in a very, very secretive setting in which the few journalists who show up on the outside are often harassed. I've been repeatedly harassed outside Bilderberg meetings, and there's very little communication with the public about what's discussed there, because they follow what's known as Chatham House rules, where basically people who attend the meeting agree to never disclose who said what during the meeting, and that's basically what Selva Demiralp was saying she was following when she was writing the articles about what was discussed last year. She was talking about what was discussed, but not revealing who said what. But usually they're very, very secretive about what is discussed at the meetings. And they in recent years, as I've been saying, they've been operating a website. They put out press releases, but it's hard to get a lot of information about what actually takes place there. And there are all kinds of theories about what's going on there. A lot of people theorize that the Bilderberg group runs the world or works together with other people to run the world. And it's not very easy to get to the bottom of what takes place there. Although I've been trying to do some of that in recent years, and I'll be doing more reporting on Bilderberg in the years to come. And you can go to my website, freemanpost.com, or search Bilderberg or Bilderberg playlists on my YouTube channel, and there are lots and lots of videos from me covering a few of the conferences in recent years. That should provide you more information on Bilderberg. And again, I've been discussing Bilderberg today because it ties into the latest news regarding sanctions on Turkey. What was another question I was going to address? Jimmy says it's probably a secret ship being sent to North Korea. Well, if it's being sent to North Korea, it's going in the wrong direction, because it's going to run into a dead end. Kez said, Rich M clarifying China Cosmos Shipping Corporation. By the way, I hope to sometime in the near future to do a return trip to East Africa, where I get a whole lot more into Chinese investment in the region, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and Chinese funded and built infrastructure projects in the region. I'm very interested in East Africa, particularly as it relates to China, and I hope to return there sometime in the near future. I did a trip around East Africa in winter of 2019, so end of 2018 and first 3+ months. It's the Wish ship, Andy says. Melissa's got a bunch of eyeballs. Someone was posing some question I wanted to address. I forget what it was. Moldova dentistry is okay, as is Cambodia. They're interesting tidbit. I've never been to Cambodia. I've been to Moldova several times. I can tell you everything in Moldova is cheap. That's for sure. And Moldova was selling passports recently. I don't remember if they've stopped that program. I need to write a new article about passport sales. I've written one before for Bulgaria Analytica, in which I interviewed a guru in that industry, Andrew Henderson, who's known as the nomad capitalist. A lot has changed in Europe recently with regard to citizenship by investment programs. The EU is very, very against citizenship by investment programs and has been pressuring Cyprus and Malta to get rid of theirs. They've succeeded in pressuring Cyprus to get rid of their citizenship by investment program. I don't remember if Malta's decided to do away with theirs. Oh yeah, Jay Bliss a while back said WEF, that being the World Economic Forum, says, quote, by 2030 you will own nothing and be happy. I think that was the quote. It was something like that. Thank you for posting that. Hislam says the old reset plan involved UBI, that being universal basic income, as payments. The U.S. corporation owes you representing the interest money on the birth certificate bond when they copy name as dead at sea. I've heard all with regard to the U.S. and you being a corporation. I can't really tell you much about that. Question someone posed to me, I think, that I wanted to address. I'm not sure how it went. Tom Jode posed a question to the chat as a whole. I wonder how many of you here think socialism is a good idea. He's saying how many of you here in the chat. I don't know. Probably the majority of the audience, I'm guessing, is not in favor of socialism. Maybe some are. China's here everywhere, but then the death cult is international. That's another comment. Oh, Tom Jode was asking about the lockdowns. I'm not sure what exactly about the lockdowns. Maybe you want to clarify. Annabelle and I were talking earlier about the partial lockdown in Turkey. It's not very intense, but you never know with these lockdowns what direction they're going to go. Maybe the fact that Turkey has instituted weekend lockdowns and weeknight curfews, and I'm not sure if the weeknight curfew is nationwide now. I'm pretty sure they both started in the big cities, but I think the weekend lockdown is spread nationwide. Maybe the curfew has as well. But maybe that's a sign that Turkey's going back into full lockdown. Maybe not. As I've been saying, the lockdowns don't even apply to tourists here. The lockdowns... And that's another thing. Generally speaking, you probably have more privileges as a tourist than as a local. All right, we're back. Brief connection issue. Rich M saying, "How about a local tourist?" Is that a joke? I'm not sure. Annabelle is about to return. Nerdigans asked, and I think there was some question in German or about Germany earlier. I don't remember. If you got any Germany related stuff, you can bring that up now. Annabelle's back. Nerdigans asked, do you know the confirmed alliances with Turkey now? Been so confusing as of late. Well, the only confirmed military alliance is that Turkey is a member of NATO. However, a lot of people are questioning whether Turkey is acting like a member of NATO, whether Turkey should be in NATO. What is your question, Tom Jode? To get into the informal alliances, Turkey is... Can we prop it up? Turkey is allied, obviously not in NATO, but Turkey in the region is allied with Azerbaijan, as was very evident in recent weeks and months. Turkey was instrumental in Azerbaijan winning the war with Armenia. Turkey as someone was saying, Turkey plays both sides. Turkey plays all kinds of sides. So Turkey, at times, has good relations with Russia. At times, has bad relations with Russia. Turkey at times has good relations with Iran. Turkey at times has bad relations with Iran. So part of the issue that worsened relations between the U.S. and Turkey was that high-level Turkish officials got caught helping people get around U.S. sanctions on Iran, and that morphed into a whole court case in the U.S. with close ties to Erdogan, and that's been a very touchy subject for the U.S. and Turkey. But as was the case last week, and Iran is still upset about it. So Turkey can piss off Iran. Turkey has very, very, very poor relations with Armenia, although just last week, Erdogan, while in Baku at that military parade, was talking about the possibility of maybe opening up the border between Turkey and Armenia. So maybe the relations between Turkey and Armenia could improve. I'm very skeptical of that. I can tell you, having recently been to Armenia, Armenians don't have such pleasant things to say about Turkey. And actually, that was also evident in Los Angeles. You saw one of those Armenian protests in Los Angeles.
There was one in Hollywood. They were spreading their war music all over, blasting it. I did not like that.
But then also, as I've been saying, the relations between Turkey and Ukraine are on the rise. And that could be thorny as it relates to Russia, and we've already been talking about that. What was Tom Joad's question again? Tom Joad says you never answered my question. I don't know what was your question, Tom Joad. You can. What's this?
Can you post the question again? Tom, what's his name? Tom Jones?
Tom Joad. I know.
Tom Joad.
I know who Tom Joad is. Tom Joad actually works with me to some extent, but I don't know if he wants to say who he is here on YouTube. Someone's talking about pharmaceuticals being poisoned.
Pharmaceuticals being poisoned? Yeah, I wouldn't give my children vaccines. I mean, I think they want to make it mandatory that babies get 14 different vaccines. I don't know. I'm not heavily vaccinated and I'm absolutely fine. Don't feel sick at all.
Oh, I forgot to... Someone was writing something about, I guess, some money going to the guard's pocket. I have no idea what that's in reference to. Oh yeah, I'm totally CIA. Actually, you're late. Who's this? Jay Bliss Speaks? You've got it all backwards. Jay Bliss Speaks? I'm Mossad. I mean, that's been confirmed 10 times over. Don't you know that I'm Mossad? Why are you calling me CIA? Oh, okay. Tertiary was the one saying that's interesting because, all right, you're talking about the California unemployment fraud and how the prisoners were raking in unemployment money, which was also federal tax dollars. But that triggered something in my mind. So we recently took a very interesting trip that we've only published some footage of, not a whole lot. We've got a lot more footage.
We went to Colombia, to the Venezuelan border, La Parada.
Yes, and some of you have seen some of the footage. Some of you saw the one live stream we did there. What we haven't published for the most part yet is our footage of us walking around in what are called las trochas, the trochas. And it's hard to get a really good working definition of the trochas But trochas are basically trails or paths, but in this context, they are trails or paths that Venezuelans use to cross illegally back and forth between Venezuela and Colombia, and the Colombian police turn a blind eye to it. And from my understanding, the Venezuelan guardsmen, the Venezuelan National Guardsmen, who are basically the border force over there on the Venezuelan side, from my understanding, they somewhat do too, although we also heard allegations that they were taking bribes in order to let people cross into Colombia. And then we've also heard allegations that the so-called colectivos were doing the same, or maybe even more so. And the colectivos are these gangs or paramilitary forces, these leftist groups of armed men who operate throughout Venezuela, and they also operate on the border there.
They call them guerrillas.
Some call them guerrillas, some call them, in English, some refer to them as guerrillas, some refer to them as paramilitaries, some refer to them as gangs or gang members. They have somewhat of a reputation for running drugs on that border. We actually saw some of them and got a little footage. You probably have better footage than me. You were more ballsy than I was with regard to them. You wanna tell that story?
Yeah, well, I was not really aware of what's happening there, so I was basically filming and concentrated on my camera settings and just having my eyes on the camera. And then there were those men with weapons on the other side of the river, and the police who escorted us around there said it's like really dangerous, don't film them, they might shoot journalists.
I'm having a bite to eat. So the Colombian police, who have somewhat of a turf war, not really a hot war, but they're trying to hold down their turf against these colectivos or paramilitaries operating on the Venezuelan side, and probably at times creeping into and crossing onto the Colombian side. And the police really warned us that these paramilitary guys are not like the Venezuelan guardsmen, in the sense that they're not beholden to the Venezuelan government. They don't really face repercussions if they were to take drastic measures, like, shooting a journalist would be way drastic. They might face repercussions for that, but
they took so the police told us they took a camera from a journalist.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So the Colombian police were telling us there was one instance, or maybe several instances, in which these, whatever you want to call them, I'm just going to call them colectivos for now, took away Colombian journalists' cameras who went to the border there to film. But it's a really, really interesting border, and we were given some pretty good access to the area, where we got to film lots of Venezuelans crossing back and forth. We interviewed one of them. I haven't released that yet. I'm going to write about it. Actually, I'm in the process of writing about it. And we might even have some footage worth a darn of these colectivos, which was risky to take and might be risky to publish as well if we're going to go back there in the future. But yeah, I wanted to touch on that when I saw something about a comment that was obviously unrelated about guards taking bribes or something along those lines. That made me think of our Venezuela trip and how I wanted to touch on that. Anything else you want to say about that Venezuelan border?
So Josh became a professional reporter for the Venezuelan prostitutes. You definitely have to check that out. And also what I can say, they don't watch television, basically. They are not bombarded with media, so the Corona, SARS virus does not exist there apparently.
I wouldn't say they view it as, I wouldn't say they don't think it exists, but there's not nearly as much mask wearing over there. Someone asked, am I pleasuring a midget off camera? I don't want to, I'm not pleasuring anything. There's something that I don't want to appear in the shot and discuss at the moment. Sometime in the future we'll discuss it, but I don't want to bring it up right now, and I'm trying to shoo it away from me. Sorry to be so vague. Real Human News says, I've followed Josh ever since the Los Angeles looting. Great job, bro. Keep it going. Thank you. Those were some difficult times, but I'm glad I could take one for the team and provide you some footage. If you don't know what I mean by taking one for the team, there was a moment during one of my streams in which looters kicked the crap out of me. Andy says my Spanish is muy bueno. I don't think it is.
Better than mine. But I had a lot of fun with those Venezuelan girls. They were really heartful and nice and lots of fun.
Were we in Venezuela for the quote election? No, we left right before. Not that we were technically, well, maybe we did. My computer and my camera actually say, you know how nowadays, because of technology, you take a photo somewhere and then it says on your camera or your computer where you took it and when? Well, it says that I'm in Venezuela for a bunch or all of the footage that we shot on the border and the Trochas there. And last year on a stream, last Christmas Day, I might have accidentally crossed into Venezuela on the proper border crossing back when it was open, the bridge, on a stream. I might have accidentally stepped from no man's land into Venezuelan territory on the bridge, but I'm not sure of that. But we left right before the elections took place. There was something I was just about to respond to, and I forget what it was. What was it? Did I hear about the big, this wasn't it, but I'm reading it now. Did I hear about the big meth RICO case in South Carolina? $55 million in meth moved a year, and the case took 20 years to solve. Wow, no, I didn't hear about that. Someone's saying, who exactly was ISIS? Probably the question you need to ask. Secret Israeli jet fighter pilots were trained in Istanbul. Whistleblower leaked this info a while back. I can look into that. There was some other recent question that someone's saying something about if spread throughout sub-Saharan Africa, it's definitely going to appear there. I'm not sure what you're referencing. Rich M asking, was it different to the time you went there when they burnt that truck? Well, I wasn't there when they burnt the truck. However, the border was entirely different. And I talk about that a little bit in some of the footage that we've already released. I'll get into it more, presumably, in footage that we need to edit. The day I was there by that burnt trailer, actually, I don't remember if that trailer was burnt, and I had to clarify later on that the big incident that got all the international news coverage was on another bridge, which I then went over to afterward. But the main crossing over there, the Simon Boulevard International Bridge, that was closed when we were there. However, there was one evening in which Venezuelans literally stormed
the border,
the bridge.
Yeah, broke through the barricades.
I've released some footage of that, and then there was, although we weren't actually there, that's a long story, but I managed to get footage of it. We were in town at the time. So there was that. There were the Venezuelans who stormed the bridge because of flooding. They couldn't cross through the Trochas. And then also there were some people being let across the bridge. Most were crossing through the trochus, but some were being let across the bridge. And we discussed this with the Colombian police, and they were telling us that under some treaty, they're allowed to let Venezuelans cross back and forth at times when the bridge is closed for humanitarian reasons. And if you're wondering why the bridge is closed, it's closed because of COVID.
So they basically walk through the river and they are getting toilet paper and medicine and food and whatever they need in Colombia and then bring it back to Venezuela. And the police from the Colombian side is apparently okay with it. They don't stop them. They don't ask them for paperwork, nothing. They can just cross the river and go back.
The soccer coach is Jesus. We were there with Jesus multiple times.
Another long story.
There are a couple questions I was trying to find and I lost. Nerdigans was saying definitely a very informative stream. If you're talking about this stream, great, thank you. If you're talking about a past stream of mine, also thank you. Smokey says, wasn't the bridge shut down long before the incident? If you're talking about the incident in which if you're talking about the burnt truck incident with the clashes over the Venezuelan aid, people trying to transport the aid into Venezuela, if you're talking about that, no, that bridge was even operational after that incident. And I've filmed people walking back and forth across that bridge after the aid truck incident.
You can take it closer because you always change the lighting when you move.
I forgot about that. Oh, here's a question from Tom Jode. Tom Jode, if you left already, too bad. Are the measures concerning the virus necessary or just designed to force us into complicity? Brent. Okay, Tom Jode reveals himself as Brent. I'm not too into getting all opinionated on that matter, but I know you like to be opinionated on that, so why don't you handle that?
I had nervous breakdowns in an airplane as, I don't know, there was a woman sitting next to me and she was not having it that, I was not wearing a mask. Then another woman and guy standing behind her, all not social distancing, screaming the shit out of me, like, you have to wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. So I started crying, I was not able to handle that situation anymore. I didn't want to wear a mask, I'm a healthy human being. I don't see there's any reason for that. I can't breathe with masks, so, we are like, our human body is like a plant, we breathe, the good air in, and then our lungs are filtering it, putting the toxins out. And when you cover your face, you constantly circulate the bad toxins. So I felt like awful in this airplane. As I said, I walked in as a healthy human being, and it was like a trip through hell. I felt so bad because I couldn't leave this airplane. I was squeezed in, Josh was sitting to one side and this other lady next to me, and it felt awful because I couldn't just leave. And then the other thing, now some flight attendants, they're not wearing their pretty outfits anymore. They're wearing, I don't know, red, that's not even coats, like this plastic things all over. It looks like in a horror movie where people cut off your arms and legs and blood is splashing all over. So it was a horrible scenario. And then on the Istanbul airport, there we had some problems and 3 men were running after me. You have to wear a mask, and I am just now deciding, like, I'm not arguing with those people anymore. Maybe I'm saying no, maybe I'm saying nothing, and I just continue walking. That's it for me. I don't have them harass me anymore. It's like depressive, you know, wearing masks for me. It's depressive to see people wearing masks. Those masks are obviously not working because, you know, the statistics are showing though people are wearing masks, numbers are still going up. So I mean, I made Facebook posts where I'm comparing it to those Jewish stars, what they had to wear in World War II. You know, wear your mask. When you don't wear your mask, you don't get service in my restaurant. And yeah, I don't want to get depressed, you know, because everybody is wearing a mask, and it's like, it's just horrible. You know, I used to be an actress, you know, and I'm working with facial expressions, and you know, I can't even recognize people anymore because they're covering half of their face.
Lighter question. And then, by the way, there's a question about my coverage of the protests, which I'll get back to in a minute.
Lighter question?
Lighter question. Which is the best German beer?
Astra, Astra aus Hamburg. Yeah. I mean, that's what all my friends were drinking as I grew up. But I'm more a wine fan, so I'm not so crazy about beer.
If you're a hardcore viewer or watched a lot of coverage during the protests, you know my beer drinking days are behind me.
And what I also want to say about these masks, if everybody would just say, no, we are not going to wear masks, then probably all those restaurants wouldn't have to close and all those bankruptcies wouldn't happen. And people are starving because, you know, they're not able to support their family members anymore, their children. And I personally think when people are wearing masks, they are complicit to this whole pandemic and great. So I'm not really having lots of respect, unfortunately, for people who are wearing masks and are complicit to this whole craziness.
How easy is it to travel around in Turkey? Well, actually, we've only been in Istanbul. It's my second time here, but from what I see, it's basically like it normally is. I think it's as easy to travel around Turkey as any country right now. I think at the moment it's very manageable to travel around Turkey. All right, what was that protest question? Hi, Josh. After BLM and Antifa made your work impossible in the USA, do you still follow it? And what are your thoughts? I've actually addressed this multiple times today, but you probably weren't tuned in later. And now, we're way into this stream. So yes, I do still follow BLM and Antifa. I'm getting distracted. Yeah, I follow what's going on with the protests and BLM and Antifa. As I mentioned earlier, I recently did one interview on that topic that I expect to release soon. I'm trying to line up an interview with someone who's been at the autonomous zone in Portland over the past week. I'm hoping to get that interview, and there will be more coverage from a distance of it. We'll probably roll out some past footage we've got or some unpublished footage and do a little more reporting on it. But obviously, I'm not as focused on that at the moment as I am on what's going on in whatever region I'm in.
Lots of streamers deleted their footage.
Maybe you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, the real Moises B, I don't know if you know him, he was the guy, you know, who filmed that as we were in South Central, as they were kicking the shit out of this car where we were in. And he deleted all of his live streams, probably because he was scared, because, you know, they were not nice to him in West Hollywood and, yeah, threatening him, make him dance, you know, smashing his camera or his phone out of his hand. And so a lot of live streamers were scared even to show up there. And I was scared too.
I would say it had a chilling effect. And now something similar has been taking place in Portland. Well, actually, I mean, there's been harassment and threats against media and worse than that going
I mean,
going back several years in Portland.
logically,
That's nothing new.
when you're a protester, you want your message to get out. And a lot of live streamers are just there standing, filming what's really happening. But then they are like this improved media, BLM live streamers who always, go away when some action is happening and just going for the walk like Precious Child, and just kind of screwing the live stream, having their chat how's it, censored, moderated. So they're like moderators behind the live stream who delete people's comments or kicks them out of this chat, and this is not really fair and honest.
I've heard rumblings that protesters did not like that my chat is not moderated.
That's ridiculous,
Punk,
People can say whatever they want, they can share opinions, when, somebody has like, I don't know, radical opinions, and there are probably other people in the chat who go after that, but there doesn't have to be a moderator.
Punkman, thank you for caring and for watching that horrific night. No problem, you tuned in late. We're not on any schedule with these live streams. I used to do weekly live streams Sunday evenings Eastern European time, but nowadays I never know where I'm gonna be and when. So I don't know if I'm gonna go back to any sort of scheduled stream. If people are tuned in at the time, great. If they're not, oh well. Trump filed a $50 million defamation suit against CNN. Is that true? I think that's the first I've heard of that. Maybe that's breaking now. I'm not sure. Loving kindness. Thank you very much.
Traveling is a lot of fun during this COVID SARS-CoV-2 times, I think.
Really?
Yes, because you can see it how is it on in other countries and on the other side of the world, and what people are actually thinking about it.
Well, you've had a lot of frustrations with COVID restrictions and mask enforcement.
But getting through the airport, just landing in different countries like Colombia, talking to those Venezuelan prostitutes just opens your worldview, and I did not regret it that I did go through the torture in the airplane.
You always bring it back to the Venezuelan prostitutes.
Oh, yes, they were a lot of fun.
Okay, I guess news is breaking about the Trump lawsuit. Thank you for the compliments. Going back a little ways, what was Nerdigans? If you're still around, what were you talking about? Spread throughout sub-Saharan Africa. What spread, or what could spread? Let's see what. Oh, someone was asking about the man I interviewed in the parking lot in LA. So you clearly watched a lot of the protest coverage. I don't know if you saw, but I did a follow-up live stream with him. There was one night during curfew when LAPD made it clear that they were not going to tolerate me being downtown at that hour, and I was stuck in a parking lot trapped between police lines with this one man who some people were calling Noodle Man, and then his name on Instagram is Captain 777. So
yeah, right.
we're also calling him that. And the police came storming up to us right in the middle of the stream. They pointed at me. They said, "You get out of here." And then they grabbed him and walked off with him. And for those tuned in at the time, it seemed pretty scary for him. I did a follow-up stream with him about a week after that, or 2 weeks after that. I went back to the same location and he detailed what happened to him. It did not sound pleasant, but it could have ended a lot worse. So if you didn't catch that, you can find the follow-up stream. It was about a week or two after that incident happened, and you'll recognize him. He's in the thumbnail, I think he is. He should be.
I watched a video where a guy was, arrested for not wearing a mask by police officers who were not wearing a mask. So
I think there are a couple of those videos.
some people should
out
just,
there.
not watch MSNBC and CNN like 24/7 and just use their brain a little bit. Just switch it on. What is logical and what is not.
Okay, Punkman. Yeah, you did show up late. Punkman's asking, I may miss the answer too, but how real is Agenda 21/30 or the Big Reset? Great Reset. Yeah, I actually have talked a bit about the Great Reset earlier as it relates to Davos and the World Economic Forum, as it relates to Bilderberg, as it relates to us speculating about there may be a push for a rollout of universal basic income. Let's wait and see what happens. Part of what I was saying is that often with groups like the World Economic Forum, you end up getting all these feel-good messages put out into the media, spread around the world, and whether they're actually going to be concrete policy steps taken to implement these ideas is another story. So I have somewhat of a wait and see approach, but there most definitely is a Great Reset initiative. It's being rolled out starting at Digital Davos next month, which I've already talked about and you can read about in my article on Bilderberg on freemanpost.com. I posted that in the chat a while back. And then I think it's interesting that you bring up Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 simultaneously. I'm more familiar with Agenda 21 than I am with Agenda 30. I think it's worth speculating about there being a connection between the two, not just because there are some of the same players involved with international bodies and the United Nations, but because I think a lot of the policy prescriptions in the Great Reset are really going to be more like policy prescriptions for climate change and global warming than they are policy prescriptions for an economic crash caused by the lockdowns or COVID or whatever you want to blame it on. Again, I think we need to wait and see a lot, but it's my hunch that there's going to be a lot of talk about fundamentally changing the global economy to save the environment. And there might even be somewhat of a pivot away from COVID and toward or back toward environmentalism somewhere along the lines with regard to this Great Reset. That's some speculation on my part.
Well, I'm wondered what Greta Thunberg has to say about this, that, with her global warming conspiracy now where everybody is just using a crazy amount of plastic during this pandemic. It's like, I don't know, I'm just seeing plastic and masks on the street, and what's her take on that? It's another thing what doesn't really make sense. And regarding this global warming thing, I would like to hear from the people who are, who are in this whole global warming thing, how they or if they know how the planet actually gets warm, because that's the thing what is not really scientifically proven. There's this one scientist who said that the planet heats up because of explosions in the sun, and when there are things that are exploding, then the planet gets warm. But it's not really proven, so nobody really knows why our planet is warm or not. And yeah, so we are human beings. We definitely need CO2 to breathe and to get the air into our brain and get this whole thing going.
I finally found to go back to where we started on this broadcast, I finally found the statement put out by the U.S. State Department on the sanctions announced against Turkey. And to clarify, the statement says the sanctions include a ban on all U.S. export licenses and authorizations to SSB and an asset freeze and visa restrictions on Dr. Ismail Demir, SSB's president, and other SSB officers. So SSB is Turkey's Presidency of Defense Industries, and again, I'm pretty sure that's the procurement agency for weapons and defense products and services in Turkey. I'm pretty sure I could Google that right now to double check. But that's where we started on this broadcast, and that was somewhat of the breaking news. That was the inspiration for this broadcast, which does tie to Bilderberg, and I've talked about that already a lot, about how it ties to Bilderberg. SSB Turkey.
And regarding Agenda 21 or Agenda 30, what I definitely see is that people are fleeing the big cities because it's became unlivable. I mean, Los Angeles, so let's say you're on food stamps and you get, I don't know, for two people, I think it's like $352, and for one person, it's like maybe 192 or something around that. You are not able to eat healthy and, buy organic food or meat and fish without antibiotics. It's impossible. I mean, last time I went to a supermarket in Los Angeles and wanted to buy some grapes, they were $9 for some grapes. And grapes are healthy because they have a lot of fiber.
And your comments on grocery? I know you haven't been grocery shopping in Istanbul.
No, but what I love about food in Istanbul, they're like all the small shops around on every corner, and you can. I mean, there are little convenience stores, but they don't have in like liquor stores in the U.S. They also have here fruits and vegetables. And I really like that. And when you go to this markets, those bazaars, you can get everything fresh. So if I would live here, I would probably never go to a supermarket chain, because on these markets you can buy fresh fish, cheese, bread, soap, like meat, everything what you can imagine.
Meat's a little more expensive here, but things are just pretty cheap in general. As we've said, the lira has been devalued. It should be interesting to see if it gets how much. The question isn't if it gets further devalued; it's how much further it gets devalued. I checked the Presidency of Defense Industries in Turkey. The SSB is basically what I said it is. It manages the supply of military technology in Turkey. So the U.S. is targeting the Turkish defense industry, or those who manage the Turkish defense industry with sanctions, and Erdogan and the Turkish government are not happy whatsoever with that. I don't think you're too preoccupied with Turkish politics, though. Where in Turkey do you want to go? What do you want to see in Turkey? I've seen a lot of Turkey. You've only seen Istanbul.
Ancient architecture. Göbekli Tepe.
You want to talk about that a little bit? I've been to Göbekli Tepe.
I want to go there, dig around, Yes.
Well, you can't. It's too late. Once upon a time, you could go to Göbekli Tepe and walk in there and dig around, but it's too late for that. Now there's a viewing platform that circles around the main area of artifacts, and it's just a tourist site. And Karahan Tepe was much different. Karahan Tepe, when I was there last year, I could walk around and do a little digging and touch T-pillars that had still not been pulled out of the ground. That was fascinating, and there are vlogs about that on my channel from last year's trip around Turkey.
So obviously there was a civilization, what we did not learn in school about. There's tons of evidence about it. As I was studying architecture and I asked my art history teacher, so how did they build the pyramids? She said, yeah, learning by doing, what is just absolutely impossible because those stones are just too heavy, you know, to be carried by human beings. And yeah, I would like to learn more about that and actually go to those ancient sites and see what's going on there. So I heard those pyramids, they are partially made for that, that, you know, you can extract energy through the magnetic field. That's why they are built on top of an aquifer. And there are tons of other pyramids all around the globe which have like the same structure built on the same aquifers underneath, and they were using the same types of stones. It's basically a huge battery.
You're talking about the pyramids?
But obviously, you know, those Edison, you know, type of energy, huge companies, they wouldn't want that we get free energy as human beings because they wouldn't make any money anymore. And that's why it's also very difficult to buy or to build self-sustainable houses off or to be off the grid because, you know, then so-called gas, or I don't know what they have in other parts of the US where you get your energy from, they wouldn't make any money anymore. So that's why they don't want that. They don't want a clean, peaceful world.
Punkman's saying Bilderberg was started by Prince Bernhard. I was talking about Prince Bernhard and Bilderberg earlier. I don't know if you were tuned in at that time, but you can read my article, which I put in the chat a while back. Maybe I'll put it in the chat again if I have it pulled up, or maybe I don't. But yeah, no Bilderberg meeting in 2020. First time since 1976 when Prince Bernhard was caught up in the Lockheed bribery scandal. We'll wrap this up pretty soon. But I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat for the time being.
Just 1 second.
All right, Perth Observer. They're closing places all over the world. Either you can't get in or you have to pay to be in nature. This is a time when it would be quite convenient to have several different passports and residences and maybe a private jet or two and a boat. It is getting a lot harder to travel. I'm hoping that I'll be able to stay out of the US and do a little traveling over winter, and then maybe come spring the lockdowns will let up a bit. Maybe it'll get worse. I don't know. When I was in Colombia, I was hearing from someone that there's consideration in the government, and I don't know if this is true or not, but consideration of going back into lockdown sometime around February. Right now, there are several countries in Latin America that are open. Colombia's open, Mexico's open. Mexico pretty much stayed open all along. Costa Rica and Panama, I think, reopened the tourism. But maybe some of those countries end up going back into lockdown. Hopefully others come out of lockdown.
Hopefully people won't comply with everything what the government says.
Sheep Herder's saying the Australian, I think you mean Australian, government already announced digital vaccine certificates. Right now, I've never been to Australia, but right now I want nothing to do with Australia. Seems like you basically lose all freedom to travel if you're Australian right now.
No vaccination for me either. You know, I'm a healthy human being. I don't need that. I don't want that. I wouldn't also want to have a flu shot. Why? You have once the flu and then, you know, it's, you know, you're just getting better, and you're more strong than you were before. So for what do I need a flu shot? To just continue working, not take some days off work.
Oh, His Lamb is asking a question that came up during the stream last week. Have I gone to Pamukkale? I have not. I'd like to go to Pamukkale. It's this really, really beautiful touristy place that I don't know how to explain other than, I don't know, it looks like kind of some unearthly watery place to walk through. But I don't think I'm going to Pamukkale on this trip. Hopefully sometime in the near future I'll go there.
What did Bill Gates say again about how long this whole mask pandemic thing is going to continue?
I think Bill Gates said in a recent interview that he expects lockdowns to continue into 2022.
How does he know?
I don't know that he knows, but he's very influential through all the organizations, including medical organizations and governmental organizations, his foundation funds.
So he has no knowledge apparently about medicine. I thought he built a computer, that's so far away from helping, to make a human body heal.
I walked right by his foundation headquarters in Seattle when we were there for CHOP.
Oh yeah,
I
right.
don't know, did you see it also?
Oh no, I think you drove by there.
It's close to the Space Needle.
I think we did walk by there.
I definitely walked by there at one point. I don't remember if I walked by there with you as well. Anyone else have any comments or questions about the topics today? Sanctions. I know sanctions is not such a sexy topic, but it's important, at least to me and the people here. It affects their pocketbook. It affects how much their money is worth, which is constantly declining in value. Also, arguably makes Turkey more attractive as a tourist destination from a financial standpoint. Bilderberg. What else were the main topics? Travel or geopolitical developments in the region. I think there were a couple comments I missed about Armenia. I think someone was saying something about the pipeline, Armenia being in the way of a pipeline. I presume you're referring to the pipeline from Azerbaijan to Turkey that then connects to a pipeline being built to Europe to supply Azeri gas to Europe and to allow for diversification away from Russian gas. That pipeline does wind its way around Armenia through Georgia. The straighter route would be through Armenia, but I don't think there's any reason to expect Azerbaijan to build its extremely important gas pipeline through its arch nemesis's territory.
And the Germans are buying the gas?
We were talking about the Nord Stream pipeline earlier, which is also a focal point of U.S. sanctions. That's the Russian pipeline to Germany. It's a separate matter. So the pipeline from Azerbaijan to Turkey, I believe, is called the Trans-Anatolian Pipeline. That pipeline, the whole point of that pipeline is basically the foundation of Europe's relationship with Azerbaijan right now, which is energy. They view Azerbaijan as a source of energy that allows them to diversify away from being almost totally dependent on Russian energy and Russian gas. There's some turf war between Russia and Azerbaijan over piping gas through Turkey. Russia's got the competing Turkish Stream pipeline, which likewise, like Nord Stream 2, is a project intended to bypass Ukraine to send gas, to reroute gas that was going through Ukraine to Europe through another route. But enough of that matter.
Where
Yes,
the Germans
I-
are so smart and so good in engineering, so instead of getting their gas from Russia, maybe they should come up with a new idea to make some clean energy.
Hasn't that been basically all Germany's been talking about and trying to do for the past decade or two?
But
And
they are not doing it.
I don't think they have much to show for. I think, at least at this stage in the game, natural gas is pretty needed. And some people would argue it's a pretty clean source of energy, but I'm not the expert in that field.
Well, I don't think it's so clean, to put this, pipelines all over the forests, and destroy trees and, natural wildlife, to put those pipelines into the ground. I think that's not really clean.
Any final comments or questions about what we've been discussing today? We will wrap things up very shortly. For some of you, it's probably really late. If you're in, what time is it here? I guess if you're on the east coast of the US, it's 4:30 a.m. right now.
Oh.
Is it?
Yeah, that was the night with Josh and Annabelle for you guys.
With the little spine, yeah, it is 4:30 a.m. there. So 1:30 on the west coast. Oh, Perth Observer, of course, is in Australia. That's cool. Perth Observer has been tuned in at all kinds of hours. Although I never really keep tabs on what time it is in Australia. Perth Observer, what is it like in Australia? You're there, apparently. What's it like to live with the COVID rules in Australia?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. I always want to go to Australia, but now I'm scared of going there. I don't want to get arrested for not wearing a mask or leaving the house.
Curtis Maximus talking about California's. I don't think that's been implemented yet, but they're trying to force people to shift completely to electric vehicles, and there's been moves to try to stop new developments from using natural gas. Punkman asks, for travel and more, how are your days there? It looks nice from what I see, and how are the both of you?
Oh, and days are just beautiful. We get up and get this wonderful breakfast delivered, to our room, or we can sit here on this terrace and work. And then we walk around the city, and I just love Istanbul because on every corner you can discover something new, and everything is in walking distance. So the city is huge, but it's incredibly walkable, and the public transportation system is just great here. They have this little trams that go all over the city, or you take a bus or a train what's underground. And I just love it here. People are very friendly. I mean, we have a couple of street dogs around here, so sometimes you can get followed by them, but then some restaurant owner is screaming at them and chases them away. But they also give them food and drop some old bread on the street. And oh yeah, I was asked if you have to wear a hijab when you go out here, but no. That's you don't have to. It's like a very international city, and obviously there's some people who wear hijab and some not, so it's so. People are wearing very nice coats, and their shoes are so clean. I've never seen a city where everybody is wearing just very clean shoes.
There are a lot of shoe shiners walking around, and sometimes they try to run a scam on you. It's
Yes.
happened to me before.
Yes, and I think 5 times a day, what's different than any other city where I've been so far is that here comes the sound. I call it that somebody is singing, but actually one person is singing and the other person is praying, and they blast it all over the city. It's just that those are both men who are doing this, and I suggested already that maybe a woman should sing and a man should pray, or the other way, but I'm not sure if that's appreciated in the Muslim culture.
I don't think you've spent that much time in Muslim locations. Let's see. Comments. We have a terrific view. Curtis Maximus, I don't know if you were tuned in when we were spying on that Chinese ship heading into the Bosphorus. What camera / live stream equipment do you use for covering stuff like the BLM protests? A cell phone?
Well, I'm having my GoPro with me all the time.
Oh yeah, you're
so
more equipped than I am.
I still have to put a lot of footage together and put it out on my channel. So the great thing with the GoPro camera is that it has this night mode, and there was one night in Chop where was a guy on a roof and he was trying to kill himself, and it was pretty dark, but I captured it really, really nicely with my little GoPro camera. And the other thing, what's really convenient when the big media comes with their huge cameras, they have difficulties operating it because they're big and heavy, and I can stick my little camera right in front of their faces and ask them questions, film them. Yeah.
You got good footage of protesters in Portland in the middle of the night chasing a CBS National News crew out of a park.
Yeah,
I forget,
that
did you
was funny.
did you publish that on your
Yes,
channel?
I published it. I'm not sure what video it is, but yeah, I definitely published it as who was it? CBS?
CBS National.
Yeah, so CBS came up at 4:30 a.m. or something like that, and then people want to give interviews and show them what's actually happening, and they didn't want to let them on, so the protesters got pretty angry on them, chased them out of the park, and then the reporter still want to go live, and the protesters were behind him, just trying to put them also on camera, forcing their way through. And then the producer said, no, we're not going to do it anymore, so they cut that live stream. And then, he took his mask down and said, oh, yeah, great, you ruined my live stream here. So his mask was only fake for the live stream.
I find that incident interesting, given what's happened over the past week at the autonomous zone in Portland. The local paper, the Oregonian, came out with a
Scroll up a bit, told you about Perth.
Came out with a big story about how media are being harassed, and one reporter was even assaulted at this autonomous zone. And all right, I'm scrolling at this Red House autonomous zone in Portland. We here in Perth, West Coast, breezed through. We didn't do anything. I didn't wear a mask, didn't social distance, etc., etc. The East Coast got it way worse.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine. He was in New York, and we both were living in Los Angeles, and he told me that there was a guy on the other side of the street screaming, you have to wear masks. And he went in a restaurant, and the server didn't want to serve him food because he was not wearing a mask. So, I mean, how should that work? How should you be able to eat or drink wearing a mask? It's not working. So, yeah, absolutely brainwashed the people.
I've been nibbling on our breakfast that's been sitting here for a while. The olives and some vegetables. There was something that I was gonna talk about. What was it? I forget.
Guten Appetit. Somebody's.
Danke schön. Oh yeah, did someone else have something Germany related or German related earlier? Maybe, maybe not. If you've got something German, bring it up now, and
Some people
the German
are
can address
loving
it.
their Gotteskanzlerin Merkel. You know, she's just their goddess. Everything what comes out of her mouth, they're just buying it. And from the beginning, I told some of my friends who asked me, okay, how should we be able to handle this, pandemic? They believed in that, and they are still believing in that. And I said, nothing. You just continue with your life. Just keep your restaurants open, go out, just don't stop doing what you did. And they are insanely brainwashed. I don't know how they are framing it in the media, but a lot of people are telling me that, oh my god, but I don't want to make my mom sick, I don't want to make my uncle sick. And this also doesn't make sense, because when you're a little child and you have the flu or whatever, your mom or your grandma takes care on you. That's the thing. But now they brainwash those people that you're gonna make your parents sick or your grandparents. And I mean, also before this COVID thing happened, when you had like a bad disease like AIDS or cancer or whatever, you were in the hospital, gets chemotherapy, your immune system is already rotten. You could die from a regular flu. So I don't know. And coronavirus are in our human system for over 30 years. That's proven. So this SARS-CoV-2 is just, in my opinion, like a modification. It's like a mild flu or something like that. When only 0.3 of the population is dying, and in those statistics, they're counting also the people who die on car accidents and on whatever. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. I don't trust those statistics at all.
Someone wrote something in German for you.
What?
I can definitely read. He says my English is not so perfect, but
Where is it?
you handle the rest.
Oh, könnt ihr etwas Deutsch? Mein Englisch ist nicht so perfekt, doch ich mag euren Kanal. Oh ja, super. Von wo kommst du? Ich komme aus Hamburg. Und ich habe schon gesagt, dass hier in Istanbul, das ist total ähnlich wie in Hamburg. Und auch ein bisschen so wie in Nizza, weil hier gibt es ganz viele Springbrunnen. Und ja, wir sind hier am Wasser. Ne? Also es ist einfach wunderbar. Und man kann eine frische Brise genießen, wird ein bisschen durchgewindet.
Oh.
Liebe Grüße nach Deutschland. Lasst euch nicht unterdrücken.
Can you paraphrase that?
Oh, well, I just said that it's, a little bit like in Hamburg here. Ich komme ursprünglich aus Stuttgart, wohne jedoch jederzeit in... Okay.
Perth Observer, I'm saying the same thing.
So I can say something else. When you walk through this little streets here in Istanbul, it reminds me so much in Hamburg. People are speaking actually German here, that's so nice. And the other thing is that though it's really cold outside,
It's okay.
so it's really cold outside, people are sitting outside, like in Germany. You just, you get a blanket, what's already placed on the seat, cover yourself, put a lot of layers on, and then you have your wine or beer or tea or whatever you want to eat outside. And it's fresh and nice. Not like in Los Angeles, where everybody is sitting in air-conditioned restaurants, what doesn't make sense at all, because, it's so beautifully warm out there, so I don't understand why people are constantly sitting inside.
I guess I'm like a bird. What you're describing is not telling me to stay here. It's telling me to migrate south for the winter.
It sounds good.
Yeah, I don't know. Here, I love Istanbul. I've said before, at least at this point in my life, it's my favorite city in the world. But
LA poop on the streets.
in the winter, I'd rather be somewhere
Here,
else.
not a lot of homeless people. I'm so surprised. I saw one woman begging and one person laying somewhere in the train station. But that was it. I'm absolutely surprised. When you're in Los Angeles, I mean, only driving to Venice Beach, there are just tons of tents at the beach. You basically have to step over homeless people to get to the water, and it's just horrible in Los Angeles. I don't know. Those big cities, I mean, I'm not one on.
This city is much bigger than well, if you include all of the LA area, then maybe not. But even still, it's bigger than this. This city is a lot bigger than Los Angeles.
But when you compare it with the homeless people, you know, in Los Angeles, you see homeless people on every corner.
True story. There are a lot of homeless people in Los Angeles. All right, we're wrapping things up in a couple minutes. Curtis Maximus says, you guys are entertaining and informational. Thank you for sharing with us.
Really, where did the homeless people disappear to? Camps?
Perth Observer saying, I heard. Okay, I don't think homeless people in the U.S. disappeared. During COVID or early in the lockdown, there were measures taken in some places like LA to put homeless people in hotels, but that didn't even make a difference visually in Los Angeles. There were still homeless people everywhere.
Yeah,
but
during COVID, more and more homeless people were. I mean, in West Hollywood, it was just awful. Like all this dirt and garbage on the street. What came with COVID, it was just disgusting. You couldn't even go to the bank anymore because the homeless person was laying in front of the bank.
I'm not saying that to rag on homeless people, though. I've befriended quite a few homeless people over the years. Some of them have made very good sources. Oh yeah, but I was also saying a lot of homeless people in the U.S. do what I just said or what I just described. They migrate south for the winter, so you can have people from up the West Coast coming down to LA for the winter or somewhere in California.
Well, the winter in California is also cold during the nighttime.
Yeah,
freezing
it's
cold.
It's not as bad as a lot of places in the world.
Okay, it's a little bit rainy. So maybe we just take a plane and go somewhere south where it's nice and warm.
Punkman is from Holland. He's your neighbor.
Yes,
more so your neighbor than mine.
Yes. Holland is great. They have great wheat over there.
Perth Observer, I sure hope homelessness is not waiting for all of us, except for the rich. Theoretically, the universal basic income will keep everyone out of homelessness. Theoretically, supposedly. I don't know. I don't know if it's actually coming. I don't know if people will actually put up
How
with
much income do they want to give the people? I mean, because as I used to live in West Hollywood, my neighbors, who just moved in, they had to pay $2,900 for a one-bedroom apartment, either with a balcony or no balcony, and $2,900. I mean, how do you want to afford that?
During my reporting days in California, I actually used to work with homeless people a lot. We did a lot of investigative work at Calcus News on issues surrounding the homeless and how there was this scheme basically to sign up homeless people for Social Security benefits and then have a government-connected nonprofit agency collect that money and manage it. And I saw how Social Security, that monthly Social Security check was effectively keeping people in homelessness because it was around $800 or $900. I guess like around $900 that a lot of these people on SSI, basically disability Social Security money in the U.S. that they were getting every month. And it'd be enough for them to survive, but it wouldn't be enough for them to actually move into a permanent home. And it just really...
It keeps them in a loop.
It kept that cycle going. Not the Social Security money alone, but that was a really core component of that loop or that cycle that so many of these homeless people I witnessed were in. Okay, final comments and questions.
There's another thing with the shelters in the Los Angeles area right now. So basically you won't get a spot when you're homeless or I don't know, beaten by your boyfriend or something like that. And the other thing is like, how was it again? Every 3 weeks you have to do a COVID test. So somebody is getting rich off that.
Yougster asks, enjoying Turkey. I think we already addressed that. I of course am enjoying Turkey. I always enjoy Turkey, but I'd like to be somewhere warmer for the winter. Maybe that will happen, maybe not. Um, Final comments on your end.
I definitely want to come back to Istanbul one day. I love it here. The city is incredible. The architecture is just gorgeous. It's just the most beautiful town I've ever seen in my life. All these old structures, and it feels really rich and historical, and yeah, you can feel history here.
Yougster, no problem. If you are from the Balkans, I don't know if you are, this presumably, unless you count Istanbul, the Balkans, which I guess you could, but if you don't, oh, you're in the UK. But I was about to say this will mark the first year since I literally moved to the Balkans in 2014 that I will not step foot in the Balkans, unless you count Istanbul as the Balkans. All right.
Okay, I'm getting hungry here now.
I've been getting hungry and I've been nibbling. I want to eat some real food rather than. Istanbul is very connected to the Balkans. We can agree on that. Yeah. So again, this is COVID era. Often, I don't know where I'm gonna be tomorrow. Maybe I'll be stuck in the same place for days, weeks, months.
Maybe not.
Maybe I'll be traveling all around the world like I have in recent weeks. We'll see what happens. But
Staying
who knows?
strong.
Who knows? I don't know where I'm gonna be. But hopefully I'll be releasing a lot of the footage that I've talked about releasing. Go to Annabelle's channel to see some of that new and old footage, presumably.
Yes, Romika Annabelle, I'm going to put it in the chat again.
And
I definitely, I'm so sorry I have to put out more footage. It's just I'm having a little bit like a conflict with YouTube because I'm not feeling I'm like working for a company I just don't like YouTube in general and their policies and all of that, so I don't really like to work for them. But I also know when I don't put it out, nobody will see it, so I have to get back to editing and put stuff out on my channel.
You're not compelled to use YouTube, and you could have a BitChute channel, you can have a library or Odyssey channel, and
Yeah, I know. I mean, if somebody would have told me like a couple of years ago, oh yeah, your YouTube channel is monetized and you can make some money off it, then probably I would have just jumped up and down being very happy. But now I don't know. After so many people got kicked off of YouTube, like, I don't know, Dan Dix and who else? Josh Sigurdsson.
I think Dan Dix is back on YouTube.
Really? I don't know, so many people had problems there
different
also.
channel.
Yeah, was being demonetized, and first they lure you in and basically you think, oh, you can make a lot of money, and then suddenly it's like without warning your entire channel is deleted. So I don't know.
We're definitely gonna scam people on OnlyFans. That is our life goal right there. How'd you know? My channels are not entirely backed up, but partially backed up on Library, which I guess is now called Odyssey, and on BitChute. And I've spoken before. I've done a long video in walking around Istanbul addressing YouTube censorship. I posted that on the community page on my channel recently. And yeah, I've talked about this other times as well. Do I have a long future on YouTube? I don't know.
YouTube is promoting a lot of LGBTQ stuff. So, I mean, there's this thing, obviously everybody can do in their bedroom whatever they want, that's my take on it. But, I mean, when everybody is gay, nobody is producing an offspring anymore. There will be no more babies. What's next? Tube babies? So I have the feeling also, when you have like a, I don't know, conservative opinion or whatever, then YouTube does not like that. And yeah, I don't know, I talked with some teenagers who feel like very confused right now because in schools, I don't know, they're having sometimes those games where they the girls have to wear men's clothes and the boys have to wear women's clothes, and it's like really strange in my opinion.
And on that on that note, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you everyone who participated in the chat. It was an interesting chat today. That was fun, as it usually is. And like I said, stay tuned to the channel for all kinds of reporting. I really appreciate the compliments and people have been contributing and enjoying the material. So where I'll be next, who knows? Maybe here, maybe not.
Maybe somewhere where it's more warm.
Stay tuned and we'll come to you from somewhere in the world at some time. For now, have a good night if you're in the US, and have a wonderful Tuesday if you're here in Europe or somewhere in the vicinity of Europe, or right across the waterway in Asia. All right, so thanks for tuning in and see you guys. Tschüss.
Tschüss.